Hello friends and bees and friends who are also bees. Welcome to this week's Indie Thursday stream. This week we are going to be starting the last of the main arcs of Higurashi When They Cry. We're going to be starting Matsuribayashi, which I'm very excited for. Last episode really, we got a whole bunch of info dumping about who the bad guys were, about who the big bad certainly is, and this time round, as the title says, at least let it end with a blissful dream. I get the impression that this game functions slightly different from the others, but I have no idea. So in a minute we're just gonna hop straight in. You're just gonna have to bear with me. We're starting stream a little later than usual today because I am working on a paper and I lost track of time, and I had to abruptly make dinner first because I was starving. Also, I apologise if I abruptly get really groggy in the middle of this. I've just eaten a shit ton of cheese, so now I'm suffering. I put way more cheese on the pasta bake than I should have done, and what's going to happen is imminently I'm going to get really groggy and start to feel really, really sick. So, God, I really should have opened this up beforehand, but I didn't, and now we all must suffer. Also got, I think, a burn on my hand, which is non-ideal. Anyway, just bear with me while we get set up. Sorry, bear with me. Right. Let's hop into the GP. Oh, panic when you think, oh no. But we're all good. Everything is fine. There is nothing to panic about. Welcome to Higurashi When They Cry. Matsuribayashi. This all looks right to me. So let's get started. The riddle you've been entrusted with solving now finally becomes unravelled. What must be done to stop the chain, and what will happen in the ultimate end? It's a showdown between the conclusion you reached and the one I reached. There is no difficulty. You should understand that by now. It says festival accompanying chapter. I hate that. I hate that noise so much. It's never good. Everyone is entitled to happiness. The difficult part is accepting that. Everyone is entitled to happiness. Difficult part is fulfilling that. I too am entitled to happiness. The difficult part is working out a compromise. Frederica Barncastle. This is a work of fiction, etc. The study was filled with piles of books and papers. In that study, there was a full-figured old man writing something at his desk in utmost concentration. There was also a little girl sorting out papers on the carpet. She almost looked as though she was playing with them, but the serious expression she was wearing made it clear that she wasn't. Grandpa, I'm done sorting them out now. Thank you. Let's see, what happened? Look, there are lots of people with the same symptoms. It's way higher than the national average. That's exactly what I expected. There's an intriguing treatise over here too. It discusses psychosurgery and civilization. It also predicts the existence of parasites that inhabit the frontal lobe. Frontal lobe is what causes emotions. That's right. Emotions aren't created by the heart. They're just side effects of chemicals secreted by the organ known as the brain. If parasites capable of acting on that organ did exist and spread to create a colony, then that colony's thoughts would be unified. So are parasites the cause of the spread of ideology? When ideologies clash, is that because different parasites are competing to expand their habitat? That or to expand religion, to expand national borders, or to expand a race. It's hypothesized that different cultural communities and their conflict are the result of parasites influencing human thoughts. There are people in other countries who think the same thing as you, Grandpa. Of course there are. There are countless parasites on this earth, and it's well known that some of them coexist within the hosts and some control their hosts. We've also discovered plenty of parasites that affect humans. Yet despite that, we adamantly deny the possibility that parasites can affect humans and control their hosts. Even the hypothesis of such a thing. Why do you think that is? Humans aren't special in any way. Miyoko waggles eyebrows. Because that hypothesis would also mean changing our view to see the spread of ideology from the perspective of epidemiology. If conflicts and ideology can be resolved through debate, then they're peaceful. But if those conflicts occur epidemically, they become frightening. And if one were to treat bad thoughts, the spread of culture as an epidemic... Think about the Black Plague in Europe during the Middle Ages. I do. A vile infectious disease spread. They forced infected people into hospitals and didn't release them until they completely recovered. Some even died in those hospitals. They burned their corpses. They confiscated and burned everything those patients touched for fear the plague infected it. They even suspected families of infection and forced them into hospitals. So they'd hospitalize healthy people over individual ideas? Replace an idea with a disease. The rest is the same. Patients won't be released until they completely recover. People burn everything that may have been touched by the patient. They force the patient's family to go to the hospital. People are free to think what they will, right? Thoughts aren't pests. If an idea was created by parasites, it would be exactly the same as a plague. In other words, an idea is like an incurable epidemic. So you mean anyone with a different idea is treated like they have a disease? That's right. If we bring this to its logical conclusion, parasites could be responsible for mass murders of people belonging to different races or religions. But this can be seen as justifying genocide. Therefore, talking about parasites and brains has been taboo since the war. What does taboo mean? It means something people shouldn't get involved with. That's why nobody researches these things. Nobody even remembers anything about parasites that live in the brain. I worry about it all the time, but that's just me. They assume that parasites which control humans simply don't exist. It's almost funny. How can they prove something doesn't exist? That's just impossible. Exactly. Proving that the devil exists is easy. You just have to show him to someone. But you can't prove he doesn't exist. You can't show somebody something that doesn't exist. It's almost as if the parasites in the brain are controlling people so they can keep their own existence a secret. Wink. Me and my grandfather shared a happy laugh together. Humans are simply another animal in this natural world. We might be at the top of the food chain, but it's foolish to think we're superior to others. Humans can be controlled by parasites. Just because the existence of such parasites hasn't been proven doesn't mean they don't exist. They exist. I know they do. That's happened before in the scientific world, right? That's right. Not all scientists are recognised for their work when they're alive. There are many who are ridiculed and couldn't prove their theories to be true. But, Grandpa, I hope your theory will be recognised before you die. Otherwise, it would be so sad. Don't worry. God doesn't ignore people who work hard. Hard work always pays off in the end. But when will that happen? Nobody knows when God is going to descend from heaven, just like you never know when you'll be robbed. So we always have to be alert and ready, so that we don't miss our chance. Wink. That was something my grandfather said all the time. Nobody knows when efforts will bear fruit, but it will happen one day. That's why you must always work hard, so you have no regrets when the time comes. Your efforts will bear fruit someday. That's what he meant. But is it going to happen before you die, even though there were so many scientists whose work weren't recognised while they were alive? That was such a cruel thing to say, but I didn't mean to be cruel. I'd seen how hard my grandfather had been working, and I also knew he couldn't live forever. I just wanted his work to gain recognition before he died. Do you know of the resurrection of Jesus Christ? Yeah, he was crucified and resurrected after 3 days. You told me about it. How do you think Jesus was resurrected? Didn't he just get up as if he was waking up in the morning? He was buried after his execution, so his body was in the ground. Did he break open the tombstone and crawl out like a zombie? No, that wouldn't be called a resurrection. The sinners who killed Jesus imagined exactly the same thing. Jesus predicted just before he was executed that he'd come back to life after 3 days. The sinners buried Jesus, sealed his tomb, and posted guards to watch over it. But what Jesus meant wasn't that he'd be resurrected physically. He meant his teachings would be resurrected. After 3 days, Jesus' teachings were resurrected, and people regained their belief. The hearts of those who wanted to be shown the proper way revived his teachings. That's what the resurrection of Jesus is all about. He came back to life in the hearts of his believers. Jesus doesn't exist physically on this earth, but he exists in people's hearts. There's a really interesting text, the Shriving of Hell, which Shriving of the Afterlife, I believe is, which is pretty neat to read. ages ago, like 5 odd years ago, I took a class called Descent to the Underworld, which explored various different societies' ways of imagining the underworld, especially in their religious and mythological texts, which is pretty neat. That's when Jesus became an existence superior to humans. Even if it's after the author's death, as long as his work receives a fair evaluation, it will live again as a great achievement. Even if my body is gone by then, my life will return and receive recognition. Does that mean you'll become a god, just like Jesus did? Indeed. My research will be recognised for what it is someday. That's when I'll become a god. That's why I'm not in a rush to achieve that recognition. I don't know when that day will come. God doesn't know that either. But the day will come. That's why I need to continue to work as hard as I can. It was very sad to hear my grandfather say that his life would end one day. He wasn't ill, and he didn't only have a few years left to live. But set next to the average lifespan, his remaining years didn't look like much. The only person left in my life was grandfather, so I didn't even want to consider what it would be like with him gone. Grandfather must have remembered that I didn't like to talk about that subject. With a tender smile, he gently petted my head. Of course, I want my research to be recognised before I die. I will do my best. Yep, I'll do my best to help you too. I purposely didn't mention the before you die part. I caught myself before I said it. Thank you, that makes me very happy to hear. Grandfather smiled in satisfaction. His research wasn't exactly outrageous. He wasn't trying to uncover the mysteries of the universe. He was only searching for the possibility that parasites could be responsible for human behaviour. Nothing more than that. Nothing outrageous. It really wasn't a wild idea. We even had some leads. Hinamizawa Village, Shishibone City. The villagers there are possessed by a powerful homesickness. When they're unable to return, they allegedly behave abnormally, as if they are cursed. There are also some bizarre rules in place in the village, based on their belief system. When he was working with the military during the war, my grandfather noticed similarities between the people in Hinamizawa and assumed that some kind of existence was responsible for their odd behaviour. He'd been researching it ever since then. In the middle of the 20th century, numerous strange diseases were discovered all over Japan. Most of them were caused by infectious parasites, and people started to pay attention to this forgotten field of study. Grandfather's research was simply one of those investigations into such diseases. Therefore, he believed it would be published amongst other research and attain recognition soon. But if his research didn't bear fruit before his death, I wanted to continue it. I wanted to continue his research. Grandfather taught me, resurrection isn't something that happens physically. It's when your life's work is appreciated. That's what he meant by resurrection. Wink, 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 wink. That's when he'll become a god. Wink. So when my grandfather dies, he'll still be with me forever. I wouldn't have to be alone ever again. I will always be with my grandpa. Our works will gain recognition, and we will both become gods, gaining eternal peace. I will make my grandfather into a god. I will become a god. Therefore, we will be gods. We'll be together. We'll be granted eternity. We'll be together forever and ever. Shorejan.jpg. I was looking at the key on the keychain. The key was labelled hen house, but the lock Eriko was trying to open didn't belong to that door. It should have opened effortlessly. At least that's what was supposed to happen. But it didn't happen. I noticed beads of sweat forming on Eriko's forehead. She was the one who came up with this idea. Eriko was starting to panic. The rest of us started to panic too. This only opens the hen house. Let's stop, let's go back. Shush! We were supposed to be cleaning out the hen house. If they found us back here, if they found out why we were here and why we were trying to open up the lock to the back door, then all 4 of us were sure to be sentenced to splayed piggy. Don't panic, Eriko. That key opens this lock, right? You already tried it, right? Will you shut up for a minute? This is the right key. It's just hard to open, that's all. She was almost shrieking. Our hearts were pounding loudly. It was as though the sound of our heartbeats was echoing through the hallway. At that point, we heard footsteps that didn't belong to a child. Shush! Somebody's coming! 3 of us held our breath, but Eriko didn't hear it. She kept fussing with the lock and the key, as if everything would be okay if she could just open the door. Eriko, someone is crying, be quiet! I know this is the right key. I'm not dreaming. I already tried and it opened. Come on, why isn't this working? When this lock is open, we can be happy and we can say goodbye to this hell. Eriko, someone's coming! Flashbacks to chapters 5. My father and mother died. I don't know exactly how old they were. I was too young to remember. They went shopping without me, and that must be why they were punished. It was a train accident, but a terrible disaster. A lot of people died in that incident. But maybe my father was one of the lucky ones. He was still alive when he arrived at the hospital, so he was able to share his final words with me. My mother died instantly. Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. I didn't want to admit that this person I could hardly recognise was my father. As I called out to him, I hoped it was someone else instead. But, unfortunately, it was my father. Maybe I shouldn't have woken him, because when I woke him up, he was reminded of the miserable agony that he'd forgotten. Daddy. He tried to move his right arm so he could pat my head, but his arm was wrapped in bandages and his hand was no longer there. I couldn't find his hand anywhere on the bed. I only had scary memories of his right hand. Its main job was to slap me when I did something bad, but I never wished it to be gone. Besides, that hand also patted my head, even though that only happened a few times. It was a big, warm hand and it stroked my head very gently, but no matter what good deeds I did, he could no longer pat my head. No. His hand was the least of his worries. He had to go into emergency surgery. The doctors already warned me that the chance of him surviving was low. That was why I was allowed to see him, regardless of his condition. Not only could he no longer rub my head, he might be gone forever. Daddy, the surgery will make you better, right? You'll get better, right? Right? Listen carefully. Dad might not make it. Even if I die, you have to be strong, okay? No, you'll get better. The doctor's gonna make you better, so you're not going to die. He was a stubborn and old-fashioned father. He believed endurance was a virtue, and he never complained about anything. That's why I couldn't believe he actually said he might not make it. I tried desperately to deny his words, but even that wish couldn't prolong his life. My father, knowing his time was limited, tried to tell me some important things, but I interrupted his efforts by crying like a baby. I just wanted him to slap me, just like he used to do every time I cried like a baby, but he would never slap me again. Listen well, your mother and I both lost all of our family in the war, so after I'm dead, there won't be anyone left to take care of you. He didn't need to tell me that. My parents used to tell me all that all the time, so I was aware of that fact. In other words, my father was the only relative I had left in this entire world. If I die, you can count on Dr. Takano. Dr. Hifumi Takano. Can you say it? Hifumi Takano. That's right, Dr. Hifumi Takano. He's my former teacher. He'll help you. Daddy. Many doctors came into the room in a hurry. He wanted to tell me something else, but the doctor stopped him from talking, so I wasn't able to hear him. I was kicked out of the room. I didn't know what to do. Nobody told me how my father was doing or when the surgery was going to start, and nobody told me that was going to be the last conversation I ever had with him. I think I asked people at the government office about Dr. Takano. They'd asked me if I knew his phone number. I said I didn't. Then they didn't ask me anything further. Sometimes they told me they'd look into it, but nothing led to anything. They couldn't find me a guardian, so I ended up going to an orphanage. At the time, there were plenty of orphans from the war, so although there were many orphanages around, they were all full. There were also some orphanages run by civilians. I was sent to one of those civilian orphanages. There was no profit to be had in taking in an orphan in the first place, so I thought the civilians who were running orphanages must have been very good people. I was sure they hoped that the children would grow in this loving environment and enter into society with a sense of gratitude. But reality isn't so kind. How many children in this world can actually express their gratitude towards their parents in the first place? Children are supposed to be nurtured by their parents' love. Therefore, when that environment is destroyed, their hearts are wounded. Every child has their own personality. Receiving affection doesn't guarantee that a child will become someone angelic. Not everyone's heart can be healed. That was why there were some problem kids at the orphanage. Maybe I shouldn't call them problem kids, though. The sadness and despair of losing their parents, and the anger at having to hide such feelings filled those kids' hearts. Spending time individually with the children could have solved their problems. But at the orphanage where I was, none of the staff members even tried to spend time with them, put in an effort to understand them. All they could do was make sure that the kids followed the rules. Therefore, they could only see the children's emotional pleas for help as problems. In this world, nobody expresses love without expecting something in return. The person who founded that orphanage was expecting something in return as well. He wanted the children to appreciate him. That was why such a faint dream was destroyed by cruel reality. The children called the orphanage a prison, and nobody appreciated the staff at all. In fact, all they did was complain. That made the staff slowly realise that love alone couldn't run a facility like that. Just like how the children called it a prison, the staff started to recognise the facility as a prison too. It was a chain reaction resulting from mistrust on both sides. The staff bound the children with rules so they could suppress problem behaviour. There was a framed picture of the founder of this orphanage, but I'd never seen him in person. Was he satisfied with the fact that he put his own money into the social service? Or maybe he finally realised his dream of being surrounded by angelic children and being celebrated for what he did was simply that, a dream. I don't know. But there's one thing I'm certain of. Such a dream didn't exist at the orphanage. There were so many rules and several plausible standards outlined for us, but the most valued one was silence. Children's chatter tends to increase each other's volume, just like mics drawing closer, and sometimes that leads to fights and disturbances of order, so children were forbidden from speaking with each other. With those disallowed, they must have thought things would go smoothly. However, I think I always heard people's voices at the orphanage. There were two kinds of voices. One was the staff yelling, and the other was the children crying. We weren't allowed to walk around inside the orphanage freely, so we never knew who it was that was crying. One time, along with the crying and yelling, we heard the noise of metallic things being smashed against each other. We knew it was some kind of punishment, but there was no way for us to even imagine what it was. We trembled, pretending we didn't hear anything, and kept working on our assignments. One of my roommates told me it was the casket punishment, but she didn't tell me any further, and I didn't want to know either. Even if we behaved exactly the same way as yesterday, if the staff were in a bad mood, they might pick on us. So even if I didn't want to know, I might suddenly find out what the casket punishment is one day. Bear with me, I'm putting a content warning in the chapter title, the switch title rather. Footsteps of a staff member were getting closer. We noticed them, so we straightened our backs and pretended we were studying hard. It was more important that the staff saw us doing so than us actually getting any work done. I noticed the girl next to me was falling asleep, so I poked her with my elbow. She noticed my signal and straightened her back like the other children. It was almost evening. This was the hardest time for us to keep ourselves awake, and the most dangerous time. The door to our room opened, and a mean-looking man showed up. Then he looked around to make sure none of us were falling asleep. Even if we were actually studying hard, if he thought we were asleep, we were out. That was why we had to make sure we appeared to be studying. The man walked around our desks. I hoped he'd just walk by me. That was what we all prayed as we kept working on our homework. The more we pretended to study hard, the more we could hear the sound of metal objects. The sound of metal objects crashing into each other, along with screams. We couldn't even imagine what the poor subject of that punishment was still going through. Maybe there was something even worse than the casket punishment. To erase such fears, we tried to concentrate even harder on our work. We kept working, as the metal sounds and screams went on forever. The only time we were allowed to exchange words with our roommates was right after turning the light off to go to bed. Being located in the middle of the mountains, the orphanage was very quiet at night. After making sure the staff members were far enough from our room, we enjoyed talking amongst ourselves. That was the only leisure time allowed to us, though it wasn't anything nice like enjoying pleasant conversation. Why? Because we mostly talked about others behind their backs. We spoke of things like, that staff member is only strict or unfair or malicious towards this person, and so on. We just repeated those topics forever until someone couldn't keep themselves awake anymore. We even discussed how we could get back at the staff, and we took revenge on all of them in our imagination. Some kids even started to cry when talking about it, difficult as it was for us. Although the subjects we spoke of were negative, talking about them was the only way to vent our frustration, and even though we felt despair about tomorrow, we were able to fall asleep. But sometimes a different subject popped up. It was about the Yurigaoka House of Love and Mercy on the other side of the river. Yeah, over there, I heard they get not only nap time but snack time too. Plus, the president is a very nice person. The House of Love and Mercy was a privately run orphanage, just like the one I was at. But it was a very kind facility, unlike ours. It seemed like a fantasy land compared to our current environment. A few years before, when this place was a lot worse, a few children tried to escape. It was hard to believe there was a time when this orphanage was even worse to live at. Supposedly, 3 or 4 people tried to escape. I don't know the exact number though. Oops, wrong button. They headed to the House of Love and Mercy. Their escape was a success. Except for one unlucky child, they were able to get to the property of the House of Love and Mercy. I guess the staff couldn't follow them into the other orphanage's property. In other words, the other facility's property had to be out of their jurisdiction. The staff were frustrated that kids got away from them, and they dragged the one they caught back here. I'm sure they wanted to bring back the others who got away from them too. I'm certain the staff were determined not to let a single one escape. It was easy to see that determination in the obstinate way they locked the place up after that event. But they were never able to bring back the ones that got away. No matter how much the staff were mortified, they couldn't reclaim the children and punish them. In other words, if you could make it to the House of Love and Mercy, then you could escape the evil clutches of this hell. So the achievement for this is, well, a spoiler, so I'm not going to look at any more achievements. On the other hand, the one they caught went through such misery afterwards, yet the exact details of how he was punished were never passed down. All that remained were ominous phrases left by those who knew him at the time. the drowned ducky, the mashed caterpillar, the splayed piggy. Can't even imagine what kind of punishments they were. The only thing I can say is that those punishments were supposed to be far more harsh than the casket punishment, which was the most cruel punishment I knew at the time. I can only imagine how horrible those punishments were from their ominous names. After that, the captured kid's wish came true, and he was able to leave the orphanage. Was he able to leave this orphanage safely and enjoy his freedom while breathing in fresh air under the blue sky? Well, according to the rumours, that wasn't what happened at all. While he was playing in the boiler room, he slipped and fell, injured his brain and died. The children were instructed not to go into the boiler room after that incident. Everyone knew the boiler room was always locked. So everyone knew he was killed. And not just that, he was killed after being tortured. He was killed to teach the other children that they would face hell on this earth if they tried to escape. Yet those who faced that risk and made it out obtained ordinary, average lives full of love and mercy's namesake, which were far better conditions than we lived in here. Maybe the house of love and mercy was really heaven. Sorry, I'm trying to type and talk at the same time. Maybe all the orphanages are pretty much the same. But compared to my orphanage, I bet anything else would have been better. Even if someone escapes successfully, the police would catch them. Then they'd be sent back to the orphanage. Sorry. Which would be pretty much the same as being killed. Right, sorry about the dialogue that I missed. The police would catch them, they'd be sent back to the orphanage, which would be pretty much the same as being killed. However, if he could reach the House of Love and Mercy, they'd take him in. They wouldn't send him back. By talking about escaping to the House of Love and Mercy, we were trying to forget how cruel reality was to us. Then one day, the leader of our group, Eriko, said to us quietly, "Do you try to escape, if you had a chance to?" Who didn't want to escape from here? It was a rather foolish question, but that wasn't what she meant. If there was a chance to escape, would you take that chance, knowing what you had to go through if you got caught? That was what she meant. Not one of us could answer immediately. If the previous escape incident was a total success, then we might have thought differently. But after that, the orphanage had tightened up security to prevent runaways. All the doors and windows were locked heavily, and it wouldn't at all be easy to get out. Even if another group escape was planned, the success rate would be very low. 3 escaped and 1 was caught before. Maybe 2 would be caught next time. No, maybe everyone would be. If I could, I'd want to escape. But the House of Love and Mercy is so far away. The bridge is long too. We'll all be caught before we get there. Besides, we can't even go outside. Everything's locked up. There were locks all over the orphanage. To escape, you'd need a key for both the inside and the outside, and after the lights were turned off, even each section of the hallway was individually locked. Make no mistake, this was a prison. According to the rumours, orphanages receive government funding depending on the number of children they house, so if anyone escapes, they lose money. Also, if we were to expose the conditions at the orphanage, they'd end up being inspected and things would get complicated for them. That was why they were so intent on keeping us all locked up. Sure, pardon me, if there was a chance I'd want to escape. But realistically, there's no way we could. Every door is locked. Well, did you know? The hen house in the courtyard uses the same key as the door to the back stairs. Eh? Really? Shush! Eriko shushed us. Sometimes mass-produced locks keep the same key. Of course, most places use different types of locks, so this won't happen. But the staff of the orphanage must have overlooked it. So there were 2 locks that used the same key at the orphanage. However, most of us never had a chance to even touch the keys. But there were a few exceptions. One of those was the hen house. Each room group took turns taking care of different chores. If your group was assigned to clean the hen house, you'd have to get the key to it from the teacher's office. You were supposed to return the key immediately after you were done. But while taking care of the hen house, the key was in the children's hands. While the staff would occasionally come around to check, they couldn't keep an eye on us forever. Eriko, you aren't thinking about using that key, are you? Let's not. It's too dangerous. Of course it's dangerous if there's only one of us, but it's different if we're in a group. Wait, why? Do you know why only 1 kid was caught last time they tried to escape? They were desperate, and so to escape as a group, they did something to increase the chance of success. That was why only 1 of them was caught. What did they do? They scattered as they ran. They dashed in different directions. They waited until the day when there were only a few people working at the orphanage and ran this way and that. And so, although it all depended on luck, it would increase the chance of success for sure. On your own, you probably have no hope, but if the staff were to chase after other children, then your own chance of escaping successfully would increase. In other words, Erika was inviting us to escape with her. The more children joined, the more each of our chances would increase. But among us, there were children who tattled to the staff, drop thing there, for their own benefit. So she had to be very careful about who she talked to. Erika must have trusted us a lot. Erika, me, Tomomi, and Kikuko. 4 children. Do any of you want to stay here a day longer? The 3 of us shook our heads. But at the same time, we couldn't agree to escape with her either. Of course we don't want to stay here a day longer, or even an hour longer. Even if we did exactly the same things we did yesterday, we might get yelled at tomorrow. I can't stand this anymore. I can't stand living in fear of what to do and what not to do so I won't be yelled at. We all feel the same way. We could endure strict rules, but it was almost impossible to endure vague ones. It wasn't too much of a stretch to say that the rules depended on the mood of the staff. This is okay, that isn't okay. Such borderline rules change daily. And if we were to say anything about that, we'd be treated horribly for it. I will escape, even if I have to do it alone. Like I said, the more people that join, the better our chance. Think about it. If they find out about this henhouse key trick, they're sure to change the lock on the back door. In other words, we only have one chance. So even if you regret not joining in later, it'll be too late. But, I'm scared. I'm scared too. If we get caught, we'll be killed. Tomomo and Kikuko weren't the only ones who felt afraid. The fear was perfectly understandable, because all of a sudden, the fear of the punishment that would follow had become very realistic. I'm sure Erika felt the same way too, but her courage was suppressing her fear, and because of that, she shared her idea with us. So do you plan to stay here forever? No, no way. I know you're scared, but this is the only chance we have. You have to be brave, just this once. What about you, Miyako? Don't you want to go with me? Unlike Tomoki and Kikuko, I wasn't trembling that much. Of course I was scared in my own way, but compared to the other two, I must have appeared rather calm. Can we really escape? Of course Erika couldn't guarantee our success, but I had to ask her anyway. There's no guarantee, but if you join me, I'll have a better chance of escaping than trying to run on my own. Of course the same goes for you too. Erika gave a calculated reason, but I'm sure she just wanted a friend to agree with her. That was probably more important to her than increasing her chances of escape. Tomomi, Kikuko, if you're too scared, then I won't force you. Miyako and I will escape ourselves. 2 is enough. Well... Erika rushed the 2 to make up their minds. It almost looked cold, but that was her way of mustering their courage, because it was very possible that, regardless of the outcome of our escape attempt, as our roommates, those 2 would be held responsible. It's not like we'll do it tomorrow. Our turn to take care of the hen house is in a week. We'll wait for the perfect time to do it. If we don't feel that it's safe, then we'll wait until our next turn. We'll be very careful. The rotation of the staff and the timing were important, but we also each had to know the way to the House of Love and Mercy. We were planning to split up, so we had to know the area. I made up my mind. Okay, I'm coming with you, but let's time our escape very carefully, okay? Of course, we'll be killed if we get caught. I don't want to die. I'll come too. Me too, me too. Tomomi and Kikuko agreed, and so we all decided to escape as a group. We waited for the perfect opportunity. We waited for the day when only a few staff members were at the orphanage. We decided to let God take care of the rest. It's open. Maybe it was the way I did it. Erika tried to open the lock several times without success, but I got it open with the first attempt. The back door opened slowly, and we felt a cool breeze. This isn't the world of freedom just yet. In fact, it was the exact opposite. If the staff were to find out we were here, we'd be in big trouble. It was a world of danger. But unless we went through that dangerous world, we wouldn't be able to go any further. Okay, let's go. I think Erika wanted to say that. We were planning to leave without us IQ, but what we heard instead wasn't Erika's voice. What are you kids doing in there? We started to run. It was raining. We all got soaked immediately and our clothes stuck to our skin. But that would normally be very uncomfortable. I couldn't even stop to think about that. We could only keep running in the rain. We were dashing on gravel, but it felt more like trudging through a muddy rice field. My feet kept sinking and I couldn't pull them up. I was frustrated because no matter how fast I tried to run, I wasn't gaining any speed. I felt a sense of urgency. I heard someone yelling, "Escape!" behind me, and all I could do was run like crazy. Okay, everyone go in different directions. Come on, scatter! With Erika's cue, we all went different ways, hoping they wouldn't be coming after us. Would we be able to reunite safely at the House of Love and Mercy? All 4 of us were there together. Or maybe someone would be missing. No, maybe everyone else would make it, and I'd be the one who gets caught. My thoughts were interrupted by the voice of a staff member coming from behind me. Hold it. Wait, hold it right there. The staff members should have numbered fewer than us, so if I was lucky, they wouldn't be coming after me. Praying that the staff voices I heard in the distance weren't after me, I looked back for a moment. If I had time to turn around, why didn't I take another step forward? Why didn't I try to escape further? As I turned around, I felt a huge hand cover my face. Its pinky finger slipped into my open mouth. The hand grabbing my face shoved me into the muddy gravel. Of course, I didn't stay quiet. I fought back, and then I saw his face. It was the scariest face I'd ever seen. I realised it immediately. He only wanted me to capture me alive, to use me as an example. And considering what would happen to me afterwards, killing me here on the spot wouldn't pose any problem, would it? Yes, he looked at me with unworldly hate, ready to end my life here and now. His pinky finger ended up touching my tongue. The indescribably nasty taste and an icky feeling through my whole body. That's it! This is what my murder tastes like. He was going to shove that finger down my windpipe and suffocate me. And so, in order to live, I fought back in the only way I could. Something warm filled my mouth. Felt like swallowing blood after a nosebleed. I spit it from my mouth and ran without turning round, leaving behind the staff member clutching his pinky finger. Gross. Little shit. Damn you, I'll kill you. I heard his roars echoing behind me. It wasn't a man that was after me. It was a beast. He had no interest in capturing me. His only goal was to see me dead. My shoes had slipped off. They weren't sneakers, so they came off easily when I was running like mad. My bare feet struck the gravel over and over. It was painful, but I didn't care, because if I stopped, I knew it would happen to me. Tree branches cut my face and barbed wires scratched my thighs. My feet and toes were bloody from running on gravel. The blood from the staff member's pinky finger dripped down from my mouth, staining my chin and chest. I was running for my life, with scratches and cuts all over my body. If I were to get caught, I'd be killed. If my pursuer had any sense, then I'd be killed after being tortured. But if he didn't, I'd be killed on the spot. I don't want to be killed. I don't want to be killed. My lungs and heart were about to explode. My mind was blank from fear and lack of oxygen. I was about to lose consciousness. I might have given in, if I didn't hear the voice of the staff member coming after me. My knees were shaking. My legs wouldn't move properly. I felt like I was going to fall like a puppet with its strings cut, but I couldn't fall. I couldn't fall just yet. It was too late. My face had hit the gravel. I felt the awful sensation of falling, and immediately after, the roar of the beast coming from behind me. Damn you! My finger! I must have hit my thigh against the steering wheel when I jumped. I could feel the throbbing pain, delayed slightly. I'm sweating all over. I wiped the sweat on my forehead and put my hand on my chest, only then realising how fast my heart was beating. I rubbed my thigh. I rubbed it in a straight line. That's not where I hit the steering wheel, but I feel like this is where it hurts. I can't see a scary beast in the moonlit car. I have my shoes on and I'm not covered in blood. My toes are fine too. Someone knocked on the window, startling me. Major, it's time. Oh, thank you. I wanted to take a nap, so I told him to come wake me up in an hour. Maybe an hour was too long. Too long nap actually makes you tired. I put my seat back up and got out of the car. The cool breeze feels good on my skin. I only see the moon. There's nothing else to see on this mountain trail. My car and a command vehicle disguised as a trailer are parked on the side of the street. I can still feel that bad taste in my mouth. I spat it out on the side of the street, but even that couldn't get rid of it. The taste of blood, saliva and rain. Sweat from my forehead and raindrops got into my mouth, but I couldn't swallow, so I ended up drooling. That sensation around my lips brought back memories, and I tried to wipe my mouth. Phew. Maybe I'm nervous. That's why I had such a bad dream. I think there's a coffee machine in the command vehicle. An unpleasant cup of coffee will wake me up. So, has anything happened yet? No, not yet. We just got Gifu's scheduled check-in. Everything is okay over there. I see. Hey, could someone make me a cup of coffee? Sure. Cream and sugar? Just cream, please. No, please put in some sugar too. I still have a bad taste in my mouth. The feeling of biting and crushing his little finger and his filthy blood filling my mouth. I'm sure a sweeter cup of coffee will wash down that bad taste and wake me up from my nightmare completely. yells because meal, right? View new tips. There's none? What horseshit is this? Right, I'm not going to look at the achievement for the next chapter. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to struggle if I have to do my Mia voice. Banquet to back end over. One more speaker, then the toast starts. Are you ready? This is the back end. We're ready. We can't hear anything from the inside, so please give us a cue when the speech is wrapping up. Listen up. 10 bottles of beer per table. Make sure to deliver them to your area smoothly. Young hotel workers dressed smartly in bow ties pulled bottle after bottle out of the beer cases, preparing for the toast. They waited for their cue to serve the drinks while listening through the intercom. At a normal party, they could put bottles of beer on the table ahead of time, but if there was a lecture before the party, then they couldn't. Guests don't mind sushi going dry to a long speech, but they don't like seeing their tables get wet with condensation from the bottles of beer. And more than anything, they certainly don't want to drink warm beer. That's why beer has to be served right before a toast. However, there's always a speech before a toast, and usually a long one. Especially at a big party like this, there are lots of guests that give speeches, so it's extremely difficult to know when to serve. For that reason, the bottles end up sitting outside by the banquet room, and people end up drinking warm beer anyway. There were several dozen tables with white tablecloths on them in the banquet room. Approximately 8 people were sitting at each table, so there were at least a few hundred people in the room. The banquet room was filled with excitement. There were many plates with many different kinds of food on each table. A sushi platter, a sashimi platter, a fruit platter. Also along the wall, there were cooks ready to serve fresh sashimi. All the guests appeared to be well-mannered gentlemen and were clearly notable people in various different fields. The huge and beautiful chandelier above them clearly indicated that this hotel held status good enough for these famous people. An elderly gentleman was giving a lengthy speech on the stage before making a toast. Usually, people don't like such long speeches, especially if it's before a toast. But the guests occasionally shouted, "Yes, yes," and sometimes gave him a loud applause, filling the room with their fervour. Well, maybe fervour was a pleasant way to put it. It was probably more accurate to say their excitement was bizarre. Which country would actually teach people not to show respect towards their own flag? There are no others. It's happening only in Japan. That's right. Is forcing people to respect their national flag and anthem an obstruction of their freedom? That's a foolish idea. Listen, love for one's national flag and anthem comes naturally to all. To know ourselves, to know our culture, to understand our history and our country itself. Those are the things that make you realise that you're a Japanese citizen, that make you understand the part you play as a citizen of this country. And the feeling you get from that is love towards your own country. However, those anti-Japan teachers are proclaiming that it's militaristic brainwashing. Those stupid claims are wrong. What are those people doing anyway? They're teaching our children to hate being Japanese. They're the ones brainwashing them with this self-destructive education. America.jpg, am I right? They're teaching our children that Japan should be ashamed of itself, and that they should be ashamed of being Japanese. Forget who you are and deny your country. That's what they're teaching them. These innocent children listen and believe such nonsense. Of course they do. They go to school to learn things, right? If their teachers teach them that, of course the children believe it. Can you believe such corruption exists? We must do something about this country's education now, no matter what it takes. The sound of applause filled the banquet room. All the gentlemen agreed and expressed that they felt the same way by cheering him on. After that, a gentleman wearing a cloth sash approached the stage. The hall welcomed him onto the stage with another round of thunderous applause. A rousing theme from a popular drama series played as he took the stage, but it was entirely unnecessary before the applause. The man's sash carried his name written in large letters, along with the name of the prefecture he was running for office in. "Let me introduce to you a patriot, blah blah blah. Man has served the former governor as his right-hand man as director of the office of the governor for many years, supporting the prefecture's government for a long time. Since the previous governor has decided to retire, he was appointed as the next governor. Unfortunately, we have those anti-Japan teachers in our prefecture. While they proclaim freedom of education and freedom of thought, they're shamelessly forcing an anti-Japan education down on our children. They don't teach real history. They teach our children that everything was Japan's fault. They don't even mention the true purpose of the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, or all those who fought to save Asian people from Western control. They don't even talk about how many Asian countries were actually Western colonies before Japan stood up for our freedom during the war. Our country has recovered amazingly since then, yet our children don't know any of that because those teachers don't teach them." I don't know enough about Far Eastern colonisation history to comment on this, except for the fact that many places were colonies, but I don't know if Japan was the one to freedom, so I will not comment due purely to a lack of knowledge, so please just understand that this is being presented by the bad guy politician here. How truly sad. Can't stand the fact that those anti-Japan teachers are actually teaching our children alongside those teachers who take teaching seriously. They're insulting our educational institutions. I'll become a governor and get rid of those teachers. I will straighten out our education system and make sure our children will grow up to be decent young people who can carry on Japan's future. He, blah blah blah, blah blah blah, announces his candidacy for next year's prefectural governorship. We appreciate your support for him. I promise I will straighten out Japan's education system. Thank you for your support. Again, the banquet room filled with applause. The man was receiving a standing ovation. I need to explain a bit about this banquet before you misunderstand. It wasn't a conference of a political association or a lecture by a political candidate. It was hard to believe, but this was nothing more than a meeting of a college's alumni association. Everyone should be familiar with what those are, whether it's elementary school, junior high, high school or college. Once you graduate from one of those, you normally belong to an organisation of alumni. Technically I do belong to 2 alumni groups, but I'm not actually part of either of them because I have nothing but bad memories of the school that I went to, other than very specifically 2 teachers in one department. And the university I went to makes enough money that even assuming that I had anything to offer them, I wouldn't, unless it went straight into the classics department, because my poor department remains very unfunded, as they so often do. You receive invitations for reunions where you enjoy talking about the good old days. However, there are many different types of such organisations. Some are simple and some are united with much tighter bonds. And once an organisation becomes united with those tight bonds, it's no longer a simple organisation of alumni. Rather, it becomes a significant faction known as an alma mater clique. In Japanese society, it's traditional for graduates to form tighter bonds that go beyond the level of organisation. Also, the more superior the alma mater, the stronger the tendency holds true. The Imperial University, one of the best universities in the country, is famous for the deep bonds its graduates form. Why do superior people like to bond? Maybe because they take pride in being superior, but more than that, maintaining connections is the most significant reason. So fun fact, I actually went to a Russell Group University. It's one of the top ones. It's in the top 10, possibly top 5, certainly when I went there for classics in the UK. And neither the connections nor the feeling of superiority have lasted. All Imperial University graduates are elites in their respective fields. They're likely to succeed and become important people. When they do, the unity of their alumni association gains a measurable meaning. That did not happen to me. I went to work in a shitty office job for a negligible educational company for 3 years and then moved across the world to go to grad school. In fact, even today, the Imperial University graduates maintain their tight academic clique, and they hold great influence throughout many different fields. They interact with other universities as well, so the graduate bonds are extremely tight even today. Additionally, while Imperial University usually refers to the University of Tokyo, sometimes it's used to mean all 7 major universities in Japan. They're located in Tokyo, Kyoto, Tohoku, Kyushu, Hokkaido, Osaka, and Nagoya. They're all great schools. There happens to be an organisation of alumni that includes all of those 7 universities. The elderly gentlemen in this banquet room were each from one of those organisations. However, not every graduate would get an invitation here automatically. It is a society of select gentlemen, and in order to become a member, one must first fulfil several conditions, such as a recommendation from an existing member, contribution to the society, possession of status, and so forth. Therefore, all the members are important people from different fields, and obviously the power of this organisation is of a political nature. But there's one more very important criterion one has to meet to join. Strong patriotism, a heart that longs to contribute to Japan in its rebirth. As a result, this organisation has become extremely nationalistic. Upon the stage, the candidate for the prefectural governorship was still talking passionately, and among those elderly gentlemen in the crowd, Takano can be found. Takano seems used to this kind of conference and seemed unsurprised at anything that was said, but at the same time, she looked rather fed up with it. As she was in attendance, she must have been one of their members, which meant she possessed not only an extremely excellent academic background, but that the older gentleman here had acknowledged her equivalent contributions to society, and that she possessed strong patriotism. However, her academic background was the only qualification she had met to join. She was only able to join as a special case because of her connections. She didn't even hold prejudiced ideas like the others did. So why was she here today? Probably because of the same reason as the man giving a speech up on stage. The man on stage didn't actually have prejudiced ideas, much like Takano. He only prepared a speech that he knew the guests would like. Politicians only want votes. Each and every person has a vote, but appealing to each one of them takes too long. So the most efficient way is to appeal to own organisations with a unified idea and a unified will. In other words, this man was giving a speech so he can garner support from those powerful people. We see it in democracy all the time. Elderly gentlemen in the banquet room will then do their best to support him, since he appears to share their ideals. They can offer many different kinds of expediency, support, and assistance. To an outrageous degree, I might add. If the day's event continued in the same way, the organisation would likely officially decide to support him. They'll probably give him a great deal of financial aid. They'll assist him in different ways as well. Of course, the man on the stage wouldn't be the only one gaining something. When he wins the election and becomes a governor next year, the organisation will welcome the governor as a new member and gain even more political influence. And eventually, the organisation will become so powerful that nobody can ignore it. Those of you reading this right now probably get the sense that they're no mere alumni association. You'd be absolutely right. After reaching this level, they were a fine syndicate. No, they'd be a secret society if the group wasn't so open about its activities. I'm sure some of you readers are brushing this off, thinking there's no way such a suspicious organisation could exist in Japan. But everything I've explained is entirely true. There are several such influential groups and organisations within our society, and you need to understand they hold powerful political clout and influence on national policies. I absolutely agree with this, both worldwide. There was a thing I saw the other day about what conspiracy theories do you think could actually be true? And one of them was that, like, even if the Illuminati itself doesn't exist, there are groups of, you know, rich and powerful people who get together and say, we're going to agree on this thing and we're going to advertise for it. And that seems objectively true. One of the things that I think about this in regards to is the proposition that passed in California last election about not paying rideshare and delivery people properly and not treating them as real employees because it's cheaper for the companies. And no doubt that, you know, the heads of all these different companies, even though the competitors got together and said, we will work together to advertise this thing because it is of benefit to us, and even though we're competition with each other, you know, ultimately this helps us to work together. And I have no doubt, like, you know, I imagine social media owners do the same thing. I have no doubt that Mark Zuckerberg gets together with Jack and whoever runs various other social medias, whoever owns TikTok, whoever is responsible for it in the States, certainly at least, all that sort of stuff, gets together and says, we're going to make sure to lobby together for things that benefit us. I'm thinking of business people, but I'm sure they exist, like, you know, all across the everywhere. That's not what I said. I said all across the everywhere. Christ. Some are alma cliques, like the one I've described above. Others are scientific societies serving different parties, industrial groups, advisory committees, religious organisations, community service groups, and so forth. Also, there are right wings and left wings, the hawk and the dove. I won't go listing their specific names here. You've probably read them every now and then if you're your average newspaper. In Japan, the term for such forces aren't very common. Most of you readers probably think of a suspicious organisation wearing white hoods when you hear the phrase secret society and laugh it off. But unfortunately, that's a huge mistake. That basically, this is the exact point that the post was making, that, like, the Illuminati as we imagine them may not exist, but there's definitely societies like this which are rich and powerful, which do exist. In America, where there's far more territory and citizens, there's way more groups like that, and they possess such vast influence that ignoring them is impossible. I think they're called lobby groups in America. So the terms they use for such forces doesn't apply to those on the scale of this syndicate. Sometimes people say that such groups have more power than the White House, and they're referred to as the shadow government. Even here in Japan, we had a shadow government before the war, our Zaibatsu. After we lost the war, the GHQ dismantled those blocks, but 40 years have passed since then. I looked up what GHQ is, and I believe it stands for, like, the Japanese military, I think? There's no guarantee our company hasn't given birth to another shadow government, given how good we are at collusion, groundwork, and backroom deals. Mio Takano was, in fact, attending a conference of such a shadow government. It might appear to be a guest house and a huge golf course. There were no golfers in sight, but by appearances that must be it. But appearances can be deceiving. This wasn't a golf course, but a huge backyard. The guest house was in fact a very stylish mansion. Normal people would be surprised to learn that this was a private residence. The interior of the building was as lavish as the exterior. There were beautiful carpets on every floor, expensive-looking decorations on the wall, and expensive-looking bottles of alcohol on the shelves. That's the kind of room Takano was in. There was a knock at the door, and an old man in a wheelchair and a young woman pushing it entered. As Takano stood up to bow, the old man stopped her by raising his right hand. No, you don't need to stand up. Long time no see. I've been telling you to come see me any time, but you never do. It's great to see you, Mr. Koizumi. The old man sat down on the sofa with assistance from the woman. He was very old. His face was covered in wrinkles, and he could hardly do anything on his own. Even so, he still held a great deal of power and influence. Oh my, you haven't changed a bit, have you? I can see lipstick on your neck. Huh? Is that right? Haha. Good grief, how embarrassing. There was no lipstick on his neck. The woman who was helping with the wheelchair was far too beautiful to be a mere helper, so Takano was suspecting something. As it turned out, her guess was correct. Though he was told that he could die the next day, he wanted to stay active until the very end. Even the Grim Reaper, not the Grim Rimper, would think that's just absurd. Mio, you've become quite beautiful yourself. You're not a little girl anymore, eh? Oh, stop. If you really think that way, why do you do the thing? What have you got to lose from having an old guy like me? I'm sure you have plenty of chances to harass people, don't you? Takano and the old man enjoyed a tasteless conversation. They'd clearly known each other a long time and were very close. The young woman came back in to serve tea. After she left, the old man started to speak. Anyway, I'm so proud of you, Mio. I'm sure your grandfather in heaven is proud of you too. I hope so, but I'm not even close to approaching the level of my grandfather's great work. Takano was unlucky in many different ways. The era he lived in, if he lived in a different era, I'm sure he would have finished his research. But he lived in that era, and ironically, that was why he noticed the existence of the Hinamizawa syndrome. The world today is in the nuclear era, with America and the Soviet Union glaring at each other over massive nuclear stockpiles. It takes nukes to have authority as a major power, yet we forever abandoned our nukes thanks to our 3 anti-nuclear principles. In this age, we're now a nation without them. How deplorable. In the middle of the 20th century, despite rising tensions between East and West, there was a temporary peace known as the Cold War, brought by a balance of nuclear weapons pointed at one another. Permanent memberships in the UN were monopolised by nations with nuclear arms. They secured the predominance with nuclear weapons, bound the world with nuclear non-proliferation treaties, eternally banning non-nuclear nations from the world stage. For Japan to become a nation that can compete with the world, it must develop nuclear arms or something as powerful. That's what some people believed, at least. Realistically, Japan will never arm itself with nuclear weapons. I know. Citizens wouldn't accept it. Even if the government ignored their opinions and armed itself with nuclear weapons, it wouldn't work. By abandoning nuclear weaponry, Japan gained the deterrent power of the United States. Though some people thought the only way to Japan to become equal to the US would be to get nuclear arms of their own. But realistically, that was impossible. Even if Japan armed itself with nuclear weapons, that wouldn't automatically let Japan join the greater powers. Takano and the old man discussed the balance of nuclear power in the world. Eventually, the sound of the cuckoo clock reminded them to return to the main subject at hand. The old man pointed to the attaché case that had been sitting next to Takano. Takano nodded once, opened it up and removed the contents. There were brand new bills packed inside it. How much was actually in there? A bundle of brand new million-yen bills was 1 centimetre, so there must have been at least enough to make up 8 digits. There were also 2 more attaché cases by her side. However, neither Takano nor the old man was surprised at all. Takano closed the attaché case and bowed. Thank you very much, Mr. Koizumi. I'll never forget about this. Money should be handled by younger people. I can't take it into heaven with me. I just hope this will be of assistance to you. Use it wisely. Of course I will. I use this money only to make my grandfather's dream come true. Got into Takano's voice now. I remember how to do it now. I envy Takano. What a wonderful grandchild he has. I'm sure he's bragging about you up there. I haven't done anything yet. I'll have earned this praise when I complete my grandfather's work. I'm jealous. My boys are no good. They're only interested in making money. What really matters is how the money is spent. How you contribute to the country is what's most important. That's how you repay your debt to it, you know? So you're saying treating all those lovers so lavishly is also a way of repaying your country? Of course. When they shop, the country makes money. Money goes around, you see. However, those lovers will probably end up buying some foreign goods. Things probably don't work out quite the way this old man thinks they do. Takano chuckled to herself. But the money I give to those women and the money I give to you are completely different. I know that very well. You've worked very hard. You've retained trust and support from so many people. This is the first time I've mentioned it, but Hariyama and Mochizuki both weren't sure about you because of your age at first. That's why I'm acknowledging your efforts, and that's why I'm giving you this money. I understand. Also, for me to give you this money means that I recognise you as the official successor of Takano's research. Thank you very much. Thank you for believing in me. I truly appreciate it. Don't mention it. This research is Takano's and yours too. Who wouldn't want anyone else to take over? So thanks to all of your effort, I didn't have to spend too much time convincing the other old folks. Completing my grandfather's research is the least I can do for him. I won't begrudge any efforts towards that aim. Takano smiled as she remembered everything she had to go through to get to that point. It went without saying, but the old men around Takano saw her as someone from the grandchildren's generation, or maybe even younger. Just how much trouble did Takano have to endure in order to gain the trust of those with such a large generation gap? It was hard to describe to those who couldn't even imagine her trouble. But Takano earned it. She gathered allies, drove away enemies, garnered support, and forced them to recognise her. She spent a long time establishing trust and rising to a status that the old men would welcome, which was all the more reason this meeting was a reward for her many days of hardship. Now that she officially had a powerful influence backing her, she could spread her wings and see the completion of her grandfather's unfinished research. Well, now that you're officially continuing Takano's research, there's something I need to tell you, Mia. What is it? I'm listening. The old man paused and pulled an expensive cigarette from the cigarette holder on the table. Takano lit it up for him. She didn't smoke herself, but knowing that the old man did, she kept a lighter in her pocket. The constant build-up of little gestures like that were how she gained the trust she held today. Takano noticed the Hinamizawa syndrome in Manchuria, not Japan. Yes, according to my grandfather's journal, around 1940, he learned that many soldiers sent from Hinamizawa to the Kwantung Army expressed terminal symptoms, which led him to surmise that an unknown infectious parasite dwelt in Hinamizawa. Under the harsh conditions of war, people sometimes lost their mind. In those conditions, those who were sent to a far-off battlefield from Hinamizawa spent their days under duress, and occasionally they exhibited terminal symptoms, hallucinated and caused twisted incidents. Yet that all occurred in the extensive chaos of the battlefield. Every incident was handled separately, and no one suspected there was an underlying cause. At the time, Takano was working as a military physician in the Kwantung Army. He was researching the prevention of different infectious disease. And one day he noticed that several incidents of deranged behaviour were occurring amongst the soldiers from the same hometown. Bear with me a sec. Can I move this? Shit, I can't move that over to second window. Okay, sorry, I got distracted there. Deranged behaviour occurring from soldiers from the same hometown. He hypothesised that these symptoms were unique to those from Hinamizawa and began his own personal research. He hired soldiers from Hinamizawa as workers in his research centre and studied them there. Then he learned of the unique Hinamizawa faith in Oyasho-sama, and he was convinced he found an infectious parasite with unique properties. Some may wonder how he could be so certain these symptoms were caused by unusual parasites. At the beginning of the 20th century, German doctors proved that some unknown diseases were caused by bacteria and parasites. At the time, it wasn't too far a jump to assume that the unknown pathogens could be behind a popular disease. Unknown pathogens could be behind unknown diseases. For instance, in modern times, it's been revealed that beriberi is caused by vitamin B1 deficiency, but at the start of the 21st century, when Ilanti proclaimed it was the work of an unidentified pathogen. My grandfather predicted his research would be valuable to the army, so he asked for a budget, but they just laughed at him. As a researcher, her grandfather was very talented and passionate, but when it came to gaining the aid of political powers, he simply struck out. Hinamizawa syndrome. No, the possible existence of a parasite that infected the human brain and controlled emotions. Even though he made the remarkable achievement of discovering a mystery no one had explained before him, he was unable to convince others of that achievement. And unable to achieve proper recognition for his achievement. He spent his life alone, unable to get honest support and unable to achieve proper recognition for his achievement. Independent research has its limit. Talented people, funding, and backup. A research project can be successful only if all of those things are present. Takano had noticed her grandfather's mistake, and that was why she did everything she could to obtain all of that. The military at the time was hoping for a low-cost, immediate acting weapon. While Takano's research was extremely intriguing, it didn't meet military expectations. But I heard you were the only one who understood my... Okay, sorry, I was checking a thing. My grandfather's research, weren't you? In his journal, he calls you his best friend. We came from the same hometown. It was a miracle to run into someone from the same town on such a distant battlefield. Although we weren't close in age, we became very good friends, so we talked a lot. Many times he told me his research would be revolutionary and asked me to lay the groundwork to secure funding for full-scale research. I read in his journal that you talked to many different people about his research. Unfortunately, its value was never recognised, but I'm sure your support meant a lot to him. But I was never able to really do anything for him. That's why I want to help you, Neil. Helping you is like atoning for my mistakes. Thank you very much. He was lucky to have you as his best friend. If only there were more understanding people like you in the military, said Brechlon. It is very regrettable to think that my grandfather's life might have been different. The old man closed his eyes and paused for a moment. Shortly after that, he looked into the distance and spoke. Actually, that isn't true at all. The higher-ups were interested in Takano's discovery. What? I've never heard that before. Then why didn't they support his research? Something came up and they couldn't let him look into Hinamizawa syndrome. Only a few of the top brass and myself knew the reason. Now that all but myself are passed, I think I should tell you, Mia, since you're carrying on his work. Sorry, I had to have a coughing fit there. What came up? What was it? Takano had believed until this day that her grandfather's research was ridiculed by everyone, which was the reason it had never gained recognition. Her grandfather had asked the military for funding so we could uncover the secret of Hinamizawa syndrome during the war. But just like the old man had said earlier, the military wanted an instant-acting weapon. That was why they weren't interested in this research. That's what she believed. But as it turned out, the military had actually shown an interest after all. Before I go on, I need to explain about the Kwantung Army in Manchuria at the time. While the Kwantung Army was stationed in Manchuria, opinions were divided on whether to advance our forces north or south. At the time, Japan had troops in Manchuria, but opinions were divided on advancing north to tear the Soviet Union, or south to expand our territory and secure resources. With the Soviet Union and its predecessor, Russia, being a landlocked, frozen nation, they'd long learned from an ice-free port that wouldn't freeze over in the winter. They'd made numerous attempts to expand their territory southward too. Those expansion policies were said to be the cause of the Russo-Japanese War. In history books, it said that Japan won the Russo-Japanese War, but it was actually a draw ending in peace signed at the Treaty of Portsmouth. Both sides had simply set aside their spheres after mutually exhausting their forces. It wasn't like Russia capitulated and offered a complete surrender. As a result, the perception of the Russian threat continued to smoulder. Later, the Russian Empire was overthrown by a revolution, but Japan was unable to shake the threat that the new Soviet Union would advance south. According to the history books, Japan went south. They signed the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact and abandoned the northern advance. As a result, when the Great Patriotic War began, the Soviet Union was able to respond to pressure on the German front by pouring in their eastern forces. Though the Germans had managed to lay siege to Moscow, the Soviets launched a massive counteroffensive that reversed the tides of war. Even with the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact, the Soviets couldn't tell if Japan would attack them at some point. Because of the threat, the Soviets had to leave some forces in the Far East, and they weren't able to devote enough troops to the German front. For starters, the Soviets had forged the German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact too, yet Germany broke the treaty and attacked the Soviet Union. To make matters worse, Japan and Germany had forged a military alliance. With all those factors in play, the Soviets naturally couldn't trust Japan to uphold the Neutrality Pact. Ironically, the Soviet Union was the one who broke the pact, but I won't go into that now. Exactly. Hitler signed the Tripartite Pact because he expected Japan to keep the Soviets' other front in check, but ultimately Japan abandoned the north. With the superior German offensive, many supported the idea of waiting and watching it play out. They believed that even if we did advance north, it would be after Germany conquered Moscow. I've forgotten how to read. That plan was exposed to Sorge, and the Soviets transferred the heavy tank from the Far East water to the German front. That secured Germany's defeat at Moscow, and the Germans began seeing a string of defeats, starting with the Battle of Kursk. It was a turning point in history, huh? During the Cold War, the Soviet Union was recognised as a global power, but at least in 1940, the Kwantung Army didn't think it was a particular threat. Japan had earned a victory with the Russo-Japanese War, and they took the new Soviet Union government lightly, assuming it wouldn't be stable after overthrowing the empire. That underestimation was corrected after the Nomonhan incident in 1941. After several fierce, short-term battles with the Soviet Union's advanced mechanized corps that led to great losses, the Kwantung Army realised they shouldn't fight the Soviets, and that inclined Japan towards the SJNP. But at the very least, up until the Nomonhan incident, the Kwantung Army was strongly conscious of the Soviets and divided on advancing north or south. Thanks to that, there were also voices advising caution, suggesting we avoid all-out war with China in order to shore up our forces against the Soviets. But the Sino-Japanese War broke out after the Marco Polo bridges, right? July 1937. Japanese and Chinese armies were staring at each other across the Liugo Bridge in Beijing. It was the middle of the night on July 7th. The Chinese army fired on the Japanese army in training, and they engaged in combat. This triggered the long Sino-Japanese War. Yes, according to historical records, that incident triggered the Sino-Japanese War, but with opinions divided over advancing north or south, the army was equally divided over a full-scale confrontation with China. In fact, we even received orders from General Staff Headquarters to resolve the matter quietly before the incident grew much bigger. So those supporting the northern advance wanted to settle the Battle of Liugo Bridge quietly, insisting that conflict with China was pointless in light of their anti-Soviet strategy. However, those on the mainland supporting the southern advance used this incident's cause to dispatch more troops to China. They enacted hard policies against China, and thus the Marco Polo Bridge incident became the trigger for Japan and China to enter all-out war. After that, in their bitter struggles in the Nomonhan incident, Japan greatly revised the Soviet strategy. They signed the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact and secured the route for their southern advance. The Sino-Japanese War got worse and worse. If the Marco Polo Bridge incident hadn't happened, it's possible that history would have gone very differently. Maybe we would have ended up in a war with them anyway. However, if the South faction didn't get that chance, the military authorities would have kept restraining the Soviet Union, and the Soviets would have had to divide their forces between East and West. And maybe Germany could have invaded Moscow. Then Japan could have gone to Siberia. The map could have been very different today. Germany wouldn't necessarily have won the war if it had succeeded in taking Moscow. England was keeping its strength on the other side of the Dover Strait, after all, and the US was poised to enter the conflict. Besides, Napoleon once occupied Moscow, but in the end he couldn't beat their winter and had to withdraw. It is one of those ifs, huh? The Axis might have won the war. Yes, it's possible that the gunshot from the Marco Polo Bridge incident changed the tide of history. Both sides had different opinions if you fired the shot, right? According to the Japanese side, a Chinese soldier fired a shot at a Japanese soldier who got too close to the Chinese camp. However, the Chinese side claimed the shot was a conspiracy invented by the Japanese military. But the shot was fired. Even though nobody knew who actually pulled the trigger, it sparked the Sino-Japanese War. Yes, that's what the history books say. But, Koizumi, what does that have to do with my grandfather? In the Marco Polo Bridge incident, a shot was fired at a unit that was training in the middle of the night. Everyone was summoned for a roll call. They were missing one soldier. The soldier came back later and it was said he was sent as a messenger and got too close to the Chinese camp. By the way, did you know that soldier was from Hinamizawa? Eh? Really? When Takano was talking about Hinamizawa syndrome, he said that soldiers from Hinamizawa could suddenly fall into a deranged state, and he realised that the soldier from Marco Polo Bridge incident was in fact from Hinamizawa. Then what about the first shot fired? I don't know the truth, but I think it's possible that a soldier within the terminal stage of Hinamizawa syndrome fired the shot. That soldier was killed in the incident. Since there was no record of it, nobody knows exactly how he died. Japanese side claimed that the Chinese army had fired at them, and negotiated with that in mind. Just a scant few days after the incident, Japan demanded an apology from the Chinese, and as a show of force, dispatched 3 divisions of reinforcements. The Chinese side was of course opposed to that. The situation escalated at once. If research into Hinamizawa syndrome continued, the higher-ups thought it would negatively influence the Japanese army's claims. So in order to avoid the risk of traversing that political grey zone, they rejected Takano's research. So because of that, they refused to even consider my grandfather's research long after the war ended too? Yes, that's exactly it. The war is over now, but there are still some conflicts there regarding historical recognition. Even if Takano didn't mean for it to happen, if his research into Hinamizawa syndrome became public, it might cause a resurgence of quarrels over the long-ended war. Certain authorities were afraid of that, so they made sure his research was ignored even after the war. I was long warned not to aid him anyway myself. Takano tried to remain calm, but she couldn't stop herself from grimacing. She just found out the real reason why her grandfather's research had been ignored. It was because of secret maneuvers by political masterminds. Those masterminds feared it so much. Ironically, that meant they acknowledged the importance of his research. Takano was saddened and frustrated to no end by her grandfather's lonely life. However, they are all dead now. I'm the only one who knows about this. If Takano was still alive, I was going to apologise to him and give him my unconditional support, but he's no longer around. So that's why I'm apologising to you and offering to give you my full support instead. Are you sure? Wouldn't research into the Hinamizawa syndrome dredge up those same subjects again? It's different now. Besides, research into the Hinamizawa syndrome may produce more than a local disease. Depending on your research, post-war Japan may gain a trump card that makes it world power once more. So the tides and times have changed then. That's right. Unfortunately, Takano didn't live long enough to see that tide change, but he has you to continue his research. So as long as I'm alive, I'll give you my full support. I promised to help Takano, but because of various things, I couldn't do anything. So I want to make up for that as long as I'm alive. I think that's the least I can do for the man who called me his best friend. Mr. Koizumi, thank you so much. Oh, don't mention it. I'm just glad I was able to tell you everything before I died. Anyway, until I'm gone, I'll make sure you'll get everything you need, okay? So if anything comes up, be sure to let me know. I'll do anything for you. Takano couldn't even imagine what kind of bond this old man and her grandfather had between them. But thanks to that bond, Takano was able to gain a powerful supporter. Tears welled up in her eyes as she gave an emotional look, but in her mind she was practically dancing at the promise of the old man's full support. The old man and Takano both bowed at the same time to show each other their appreciation. Once that was done, the old man became a little more serious. After that far too lengthy preamble, he finally said what he really wanted to tell her. So there you have it. This is what I wanted to say. The Hinamizawa syndrome has the potential power to make history. It may even twist the fate of our country. So keep that in mind and be careful with your research. After the proprietor finished serving the food, she bowed and left. The room was very tastefully put together, reminding them of a tea ceremony room. While it was sparsely decorated, quite a bit of money had obviously gone into it. This was a very famous Japanese restaurant, where many high-up officials and other important people held secret meetings. Takano was there, accompanied by about 5 gentlemen. She was sitting slightly further away from the men. They were clearly in a much more important position than she was. One of the men, wearing an expensive double-breasted suit, told Takano not to be so nervous. "Please relax, Mr. Takano. What we read is very interesting to us. Can't believe this research was just sitting there for dozens of years." It is surprising. Thought most of the research on BC weapons the Japanese military conducted during the war failed to bear fruit. Nothing was left after the US military confiscated even the fundamental research. I heard this research was barely even glanced at by the top brass. I see. So that's why nobody knew about it and GHQ didn't investigate it. In that sense, at least, it was truly fortunate. Interesting that Dr. Takano's research would be succeeded by a different Mr. Takano. I suppose that's fate. It's like the deceased is using your body to complete his life's work. Maybe that's true. I feel a mysterious connection to him, too. Takano adored Takano Hifumi and called him grandfather, but she hadn't revealed that relationship to others. She realised it wouldn't be beneficial for people to think she was involving personal feelings and continuing Dr. Takano's research. So publicly, she once had exchanges with Takano Hifumi, and after his death, discovered his research documents with his remains and chose to carry it on. At least that's how the story went. Well then, what do you think? Defense Agency was very interested. According to Nakagawa, the DA's Technical Research R&D Institute showed great interest. They offered to sponsor the research too. Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations, Mr. Kano. Thank you so much. Here's what they said. There's a research council for next generation deterrence being led by experts from several different ministries. One of those is called the Alphabet Project. Have you heard of it, Mr. Kano? There was no way she'd know about something like that, but it's very possible for these nationalists to research something dangerous without citizens knowing about it. Society forms something like a web made of connections between people. People hold hands with other people who share the same ideas and end up knitting a net. Of course, some nets are well known, but there are some secret ones too. So there was no way of guessing just how the men at this meeting were connected. A society involving research into deterrent weapons for the next generation. The Alphabet Project. With those words, it was possible to imagine what that might entail. Deterrent weapons? That usually refers to nuclear technology. Weapons are normally used to destroy enemies. However, the general idea of deterrent weapons is very different. The assumption is that they won't actually be used against anyone. Nuclear weapons are largely used as a threat to prevent enemy invasion. Both the US and Soviets possess large stockpiles of nuclear arms, keeping each other in check, but they'll never actually use them. Because if they did, there'd be a nuclear war and both countries would be destroyed. So they're like a legendary weapon you never draw. Of course, that last resort only works because both sides have nuclear weapons. If one side lacks them, then they lose all military negotiation power. In other words, nations without nukes are powerless before nuclear armed states. That can't be true. Japan abandoned nukes and it still functions as a nation today, or so some people may be thinking, but they're wrong. Japan abandoned nukes, but lies under the nuclear umbrella by allying itself with the states. That means the nation functions thanks to America's nukes. However, that also means we must resign ourselves to forever being a vassal of America. In order for Japan to escape that and become a powerful nation equal to America, it must possess its own deterrent arms and step out of that nuclear umbrella. That society must have been put together by experts who believe in that ideal. Given that, even the name of Alphabet Project makes sense. Nuclear weapons are weapons of mass destruction. However, WMDs aren't always nuclear. They also include biological weapons and chemical weapons. Atomic, biological, chemical. The initials of those three words make up ABC. That's why WMDs are sometimes called ABC weapons. Won't go into WMDs that don't belong to those three categories. Hence, Alphabet. So the Alphabet Project must be a code for research into WMDs. As it happened, this guess of Takano's was correct. By rights, Japan should possess nuclear arms. We established ourselves as a peace-loving nation after the war, and after our vast international contributions, we've been recognised as a permanent member of the UN. Yet until we possess nuclear arms, we won't be recognised as a proper nation. That is the long-held desire of post-war Japan. Exactly. However, realistically, thanks to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, major nations hold a monopoly on nukes. Worse, a domestic public opinion is growing allergic to nukes, so foreign and domestic pressures make implementing them impossible. Biological and chemical weapons are something known as the poor man's nuke. Small countries that can't own nuclear weapons have already started research into that kind of weaponry. So, fun fact, I find biochemical weapons really terrifying. Just like conceptually, when you look into like biochemical attacks, it's really scary. Right at the start of lockdown, I was like everyone else, very negative, and I got very into looking, not like researching, that's the wrong word, but reading about various sorts of disasters, both natural and non-natural, including like biochemical attacks and stuff like that. And it, on the one hand, I'm like, I know it's highly unlikely to happen to me, given the situation I'm in general, but like, it's still scary. You think about like the Novichok poisonings in Salisbury, the fact that like civilians got poisoned because the poison was transported in a perfume bottle and somebody picked the bottle up and thought, oh yeah, this is perfume, and like that bad getting rid of it was spread to the populace at large. It's just scary that like that could happen, you know? I mean, I'm not the sort of person to pick up a random bottle of perfume off the floor, but the point still stands that it's definitely possible. Can't own nuclear weapons have already started research into that kind of thing. Takano, please don't misunderstand us, okay? The purpose of our research isn't to obtain a biological weapon. Sorry, I hit the wrong button there. Instead, our goal is to prevent such weapons from coming into Japan from other countries. So this is research into self-defense. I want you to understand that. Yes, I'm aware of that. Takano hated this Japanese tendency to make excuses, but she didn't let it show on her face. No matter what they said, they already saw the value in using this research towards biological weaponry. However, in truth, that was just an excuse as well. If they actually wanted to research biological weapons, then it would be much faster to research diseases like smallpox and anthrax, instead of an unidentified disease like Hinamizawa syndrome. So it wasn't actually correct to say the Defense Agency was interested in it as a biological weapon. In other words, Takano needed a powerful sponsor who could back her up with funding, personnel, and a facility to conduct her research. So she used her connections and turned to the old men behind the government economy. Reaching out to each of them and getting them to forcibly pull funding out of the DA under the excuse of its application towards biologically weaponry. That was the truth. Therefore, her project wasn't officially recognised by the Defence Agency. To be exact, the people who secretly controlled the Defence Agency were the ones who knew about it. These masterminds diverted funding from the Defence Agency to the Alphabet Project, and then they pushed for Takano's research to be part of it. Takano gets her funding, and the influencers get to gain public funds through kickbacks. Considering that, it was doubtful this project was genuinely about researching the next generation of deterrence arms. Probably just an excuse for the masterminds to funnel money into their own pockets. Well, those complicated matters didn't matter to Takano. Whatever those old men and influencers were planning wasn't her business. As long as she could get the funding for her research, that was enough. Either way, Takano had found her sponsor. It was one of the biggest organisations around too. This had always been her grandfather's dream. Takano was trying to stay calm, but she was about to jump up and down in excitement. Nakagawa says that once the research gets underway, he doesn't mind buying out. Although it's still incomplete, he definitely sees potential in it. You're absolutely right. This research is only halfway complete. Sufficient funding, facilities, and personnel will be indispensable. About that, here's where the negotiations start, but apparently they wish to take on this research in its entirety. I feel bad saying this, but they think the burden is too much for you to bear alone. Hearing that put quite the damper on Takano's ecstasy. I'm not trying to make money off of this. I'm working as a researcher purely out of intellectual curiosity. What I need is a sponsor, and what they seek are results. That was the relationship I'd hoped to establish. Takano realised she was talking rather breathlessly, so she tried to calm herself down. Either way, they'd be backing the research. Considering they're hoping for results that merit the budget, they probably feel that Takano is still too young to handle it. I know. You've been working on this for a long time, and you don't want anyone to just grab it from you, right? I totally understand that. Of course, we've already informed them. So here's the compromise we came up with. First, we'll start your research as an offshoot of the Alphabet Project. Once you have the Board of Directors' approval, you'll be given official funding. We'll have you participate in the project as an associate researcher, and you'll take part in the research that way. If she wanted their funding, she'd have to fall under their authority, of course. So far, she had no objections. However, the Research Society has listed a few conditions in exchange for funding this project. First, as was just mentioned, is to entrust the position of lead researcher to an individual that's skilled and talented in this field of research. I hate to interject, but who would be more knowledgeable about this than me? Other than the late Dr. Takano, of course. Now. Please calm down, Mr. Takano. I understand how you feel. Still, how is this any different from selling my research to this individual? This isn't what we discussed at all. Calm down, Mr. Takano. Those cunning old men didn't miss sight of the faint leak of anger that crossed her expression. They gave evasive laughs, as if remarking on how immature she still was, if she let her emotions go over such a little thing. However, they weren't laughing to look down on Takano. On the contrary, they were trying to tell her to wait until the end. Of course, we'll make sure you get your way. Mr. Koizumi told me to take good care of you. Do you think I'd just ignore you after he told me that? Don't worry. Please, let me work things out. I'll make sure you'll be happy. What do you mean? You see, I get to select the person in charge. Everyone shorted except Takano. After a moment, she joined in. In other words, he meant he'd find just the right person. The defense agency suggested finding an expert to lead the project because they didn't feel comfortable with just Takano. However, Takano's sponsor was the one tasked to find such a person. In that moment, Takano realised it. How wonderful it is to have such a powerful backer. Let me work it out. I'll find some candidates for you. All you have to do is pick the ones you think would be most suitable. Takano felt better after hearing that. While she wouldn't be the official head of the project, she'd end up leading it from the shadows. Of course, she wasn't an expert per se. Having a partner would actually be beneficial. Give me some time to talk to the other end. I'll make sure you'll be happy with the outcome. Please, just be patient for a while. I understand. Thank you for everything. Oh, by the way, it's not just the defense agency. Nagata from the Ministry of Health and Welfare is willing to help you too. He introduced me to Ito from the National Institute of Infectious Diseases. He's willing to help you with equipment and other technology. Really? Thank you so much. This is a national project, isn't it? Congratulations, Mr. Takano. This is all because of your effort and the deceased Dr. Takano's hard work. Oh no, this is all because of Dr. Takano. I haven't done anything yet. Being humble is a good virtue. Just like Mr. Koizumi told me, you truly are a nice person, aren't you? No wonder he adores you. Anyway, they want you to join the defense agency. Luckily, you have a doctor's license, right? We'll secure your position as the medical officer at the TRDI. Do you mean I'll be a public servant? I wasn't expecting that. All the organisations that are involved with the Alphabet Project are public institutions. SDF is actually interested in this research as well, and they're making strong requests to dispatch some of their personnel too. So depending on the circumstances, you may be treated as an SDF member. Well, just think of those matters as officials squabbling over jurisdiction. So to stand above those officials, you need your own official position. No matter what, we'll make sure you'll be happy, so please, don't worry about anything. I understand. I'll let you work things out. But knowing Dr. Takano's research was once rejected by the old Japanese military, it's hard to believe that the Self-Defense Force is interested in it now. Well, that couldn't be stopped. With the war situation worsening, Japanese military sought something with immediate effect, something that could turn the war around. Don't think they were looking down on Dr. Takano's research. That wasn't true, of course. Takano already heard the confession from the old man. She exhaled. To her, it was like the meeting in front of her was happening somewhere far away. She'd longed for this day to come and worked so hard to reach it. Finally, her grandfather and his research were attaining recognition. This was the day she dreamed of, so she was frightened just imagining that it might be an actual dream. True joy can't be felt all at once. Oftentimes it's a delayed reaction. Takano thought that must be exactly what she was feeling. I imagine you'll probably be given a field officer's rank. Since you'll be second in command, you'll likely be a major. That's wonderful. Major Takano, huh? My, I'm a little jealous. As a man, I wish I had a rank like that. Boy oh boy, Major Takano, huh? Huh? A major? What does that signify? Well, it's reasonably high in the rank system of the Self-Defense Force. It's like a sub-manager at a company, I guess. That'll be your rank once the project gets underway. It's equivalent to a lieutenant commander in the old Japanese military. What a coincidence! Dr. Takano was also a lieutenant commander in the old military. Takano remembered suddenly. They were right. Her grandfather had been a lieutenant commander in the Japanese military. Everything she'd done until today was so she could continue her grandfather's research. Now everything had fallen into place. She'd even been granted the same rank as her grandfather. She'd always believed that succeeding in his research would be proof that they had one tighter than blood. And now she would even be the same rank as him. This is fate, Takano thought. Maybe this is even a message from Grandpa? Yes, it must have been a shout of encouragement from heaven. It was proof that she'd inherited not only his research, but his will as well. Takano couldn't help but feel a sense of destiny for attaining the rank of Major. Grandpa, I'm finally here. Nobody else could hear her say that, but her grandfather in heaven could. That's what Takano believed. She'd only come so far. There were still a lot of things to do for this research to be recognised as a great work. Otherwise, her grandfather won't become a god. She wouldn't become one either. You must become a god. That was in her grandfather's will. I was unable to do so. That line preceded it. Sorry for the weird noise sounds. I'm shifting around to get comfortable in this uncomfortable chair. It was her grandfather's dying wish. Her grandfather entrusted it to her. All of his research. A god can't be physically brought back to life. A god is made in the hearts of people who remain alive. Her grandfather will live on in her heart. His exploits will be known to many, and all the scholars will fight to read his documents, to steal them from each other. And they will learn about Hifumi Takano, who began his research during the war. they will learn that nobody understood him and that he ended up devoting his lonely life to his research. And finally, they'll extol his grand achievement. Or his granddaughter will cause a chemical disaster and drive a whole bunch of people insane. That could happen too. The weight of history. Are there actually tips in this game? Let's take a look at, I'm just going to take a look at the achievements. So, there are tips, just not yet. But apparently the prologue is 4 chapters long, so maybe we'll get the prologue done today. Seeing as we've got just over an hour left, so it took us about an hour and a half. Each one seems to be taking about 45 minutes roughly, so maybe we'll get the prologue done today. I have no idea how long the rest of the game will be though. Allow me to introduce you. This is Major Takano. Major, this is Dr. Kyosuke Irie. Hello, I'm Irie. Irie seemed extremely nervous at our first meeting. Probably thought I was in charge of some suspicious organisation. Please relax. Call me Takano. You know what, I'm fed up. I'm just going to do my normal voice for Takano for now, because doing her breathless voice is a pain in the ass. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. Whoops, Please, have a seat. A model, lower middle class citizen was a good way to describe Kyosuke Irie's demeanour. One could also say he was a stereotypical type of person to get conveniently discarded after those crafty elders used their seniority to constantly pick on him. Of a sort. Certainly doesn't seem as cunning as I am, but that doesn't mean he isn't ambitious. Like me, he is a young person who dreams of accomplishing something great and leaving his name upon generations to come. While he acts humble in person like this, his articles were actually progressive as well as aggressive. The gap between the two was quite intense. I've read the data concerning this Hinamizawa syndrome. What did you think? Well, it's really quite the shock. It's very possible that this is something that steps onto the dark side of today's medicine, but I can hardly control my intellectual excitement in knowing it's a mystery that is yet to be solved. Hearing that made me chuckle. Irie is more than interested in Hinamizawa syndrome, which is good enough for me. She'd been through the ringer with far too many people to reach this day, so her honed intuition could tell. She'd get along well with this man. Even if he isn't useful to me, he won't cause any problems. For both me and my sponsor, he's the best person possible for the job. I was shocked too. To imagine a man of your experience and knowledge was just wasting away in the medical office without any responsibilities or work to accomplish. I have to say that was a grave loss to the medical field. Haha. Irie laughed. He probably thought I didn't know, but I'd received detailed documents on him, so I knew why he was exiled from the limelight despite his rare talent and achievements. Gonna change back to... God, that original artwork is bad. Displayed extraordinary skill working under our neurosurgery department, and everyone expected a bright future from him, but he was kicked out due to an ethical controversy. Irie's pet theory was that the antisocial behaviour of individuals could be explained by brain disorders. He believed that no one in this world was born a villain, and they were all just poor patients in need of treatment. He proposed that they were all proper and normal when born, yet as they matured, psychogenesis and various outside factors caused brain disorders that made them into villains. Therefore, what those evil people needed isn't punishment, but treatment, and if the disease is treated, they'll become good citizens again. That manner of thinking actually fell in line with the Confucian belief of innate human goodness. According to this theory, humans are born with a capacity for altruism towards their kind, and it is only afterwards that they learn and acquire cruelty. Irie believed that acquisition was the result of brain disorders. The human brain creates human thoughts. Therefore, if one becomes emotionally ill, that means their brain is ill. So if their brain gets treatment, they'll recover emotionally too. That field was called psychosurgery. It's fallen out of practice in the current Heisei era, but the surgical techniques were applauded until mid-Showa, especially since it produced spectacular results on a chronic mental patient that was said to be incurable. The man who invented it even won a Nobel Prize. That was how revolutionary it was. Humans think. That's why they become ill. Everyone knows that's why those who overthink matters are prone to mental illness. Looks at camera like him in the office. When the organ that thinks and debates grows ill, humans deviate from social behaviour. That part is called the frontal lobe. Put simply, psychosurgery is surgery performed to operate on the frontal lobe. This kind of surgery doesn't require removing the whole epicranium. A small hole is drilled through the cranium and a special scalpel is inserted down to cut it. It's not a major surgery, just a technique for quickly operating on the precious frontal lobe. Indeed, it was revolutionary in its simplicity. All the severely ill mental patients miraculously recovered, so the technique spread around the world quickly. those with obstinate and chronic mental illnesses, the severely ill trapped in deep, inescapable depression. All of those could be saved by this technique. Throughout history, humans have come up with many different religions and magic tricks to heal emotional injuries. So needless to say, the idea of being able to treat them with a surgical technique was truly revolutionary. Irie admired psychosurgery and pushed forward in the field of surgical techniques to treat human souls. However, from the modern human rights standpoint, severing a portion of the brain simply because someone is emotionally disturbed is absolutely out of the question. People gradually started to think differently and said that psychosurgery was inhuman. Because of who I am, my brain reads psychos and fills in the rest with psychosocial, which means that I now have that stuck in my head. So my brain is just going, I did my time and I want out. Except I can't do the screams because of who I am as a person. But I would recommend watching 10 Seconds Songs cover as psychosocial. It's very good. Also the part that makes humans act human. There were quite a few cases where that cut caused drastic, irreversible changes in the patient. A baseless happiness born from lack of thought, a change in personality, a loss of interest in everything, major mood swings due to a lack of control over one's emotions. Some even lost part of their memories. Of course, some didn't even survive the surgery. By the mid-1960s, use of psychosurgery declined. Also due to the development of psychotropic medicine, the surgery was hardly performed anymore anyway. Yet some people still believed in the idea and continued to perform the surgery and gather clinical data. They wanted people to recognise the value of the technique once again. Some of these surgeries were performed without consent. One theory is that in Japan alone, there were thousands of people who woke up from general anaesthesia only to find part of their brain had been removed. I feel like this has also been discussed in the States somewhere in unethical research, but I can't remember because it's been a while since I read about it. Today, to perform such a surgery without patient's consent is considered totally unethical, but it was different at the time. For one thing, the idea that doctors required prior patient consent was proliferated in the modern Heisei era. Therefore, people at the time didn't think it was that big of an issue. It was only later that people started to argue that it was inhumane. Finally, a decision was reached and the curtain closed with the rejection of psychosurgery. Later, the Japanese Society of Psychology and Neurology passed the resolution to end psychosurgery. After that, it was banned throughout Japan and made a forbidden subject of Japanese medicine. Irie was the leading person in the field of psychosurgery. He continued to advocate its effectiveness and results. Therefore, he was treated as a war criminal who practiced inhumane medicine and was exiled from the public eye. However, that doesn't mean he changed his beliefs. He still believes that immoral behaviour is caused by brain disorders, and the secret of treating them is in fact hidden in the brain. So the existence of Hinamizawa syndrome, caused by parasites living in the brain that control human emotions, affirms this theory. If it's alright with you, I'd love to accept this position. Of course. Where's the button that stops talking? It is 7. Cool. Given Irie's history, he'd never turn down this offer. Despite his mild-mannered appearance, Irie was possessed by a mighty ambition. There was no way he didn't desire a chance to complete research that would prove himself to the medical field that had ostracised him. I'm handing him that chance on a silver platter. Thank you very much. I knew you'd accept. We are very lucky to have an expert like you. You'll be a great help. But are you okay with me being the director? Wouldn't it be better for you to hold that position, Mr. Kano? I'm just a simple doctor. Being in charge of other people is... Don't worry. I'll give you my full support. Our sponsor wanted to pick a civilian. Besides, wouldn't you like to be called Director Irie? But... Irie laughed to hide his embarrassment. We're building a research centre in Hinamizawa. Publicly it will be a clinic. So with your consent, Dr. Irie would like to call it the Irie Clinic. Lord of my own castle. That's more than I deserve. You'll also be placed under the STF, so you'll be registered as a medical officer with them. Since you'll be my superior, you'll be a Lieutenant Colonel. Lieutenant Colonel Irie. How does that sound to you? I'm not a military man. I'd rather refrain from being called Lieutenant Colonel. A director is already a frightening title as is. Oh my. He's getting a chance to research brain parasites, plus being given the title of Director of a new clinic as camouflage. Plus, it comes with staff and funding. He'll even have support from the Defence Agency and the Ministry of Health and Welfare, as well as a research lab with state-of-the-art equipment. No wonder he's laughing so excitedly. However, there are some risks too. Since he'll be involved with secret research, he has an obligation to keep it a secret. Also, he's going to an area plagued by mysterious and bizarre disease. There's no guarantee he won't contradict it himself. But Irie is too young to even think about those things. Aware of all the risks, he quickly signed the contract with the ambition to have people recognise his talent once again. Never knew that about Irie, obviously. Intriguing. People have hidden depths like onions. When I saw him sign the contract, I finally relaxed. I knew he'd agreed to join us, but at the same time I was afraid of the chance he'd refuse. Selecting a director proved more difficult than expected, and the only candidate Takano paired well with was Irie. So if Irie refused to take the position, then, frankly, she'd be placed in an even worse position. Now that Irie has agreed to take the position, research on Hinamizawa syndrome can finally begin. Okay, sorry, got distracted. The research centre, or rather the clinic, will be completed next spring. The Ministry of Health and Welfare and the Defence Agency will send their best equipment and staff, plus an abundant supply of funds. Then finally, our research will begin in earnest. Everything is going well. Of course it is. I've put so much effort into making sure things went smoothly up to this point. Okay, that's it. Congratulations, Dr. Irie. Major, the contract has been signed. Thank you. I look forward to working with you, Director Irie. I look forward to working with you, Mr. Kano. I hope we can get along. I'll be devoting my best efforts to this. No, thank you. Let's both give our best. Now the position of director has been filled. Everything is set. Haha, that's great, just great. Congratulations, Mr. Takano. No, Major Takano, isn't it? Haha. This is all possible thanks to your assistance. Must give my thanks to all of you. Oh, don't mention it. But we should save our congratulations until you finish your research, huh? You're only at the starting line, aren't you? Exactly. I'll be devoting my every waking moment to this research. We can hardly wait to see the results of what Dr. Takano couldn't finish. Haha. Well now, let's not talk about business today. Let's have a toast to congratulate Mr. Kano and the Irie Institute. Hello everyone, I'm Nagata from the Ministry of Health and Welfare. I'd like to say a few things before the toast. Mr. Kano, make sure he works hard, okay? His research centre will be supporting the Institute. If you need any technical support, just call him. Make him work hard? No, I have to thank you for your support. I'm Takano, pleased to meet you. Mr. Kano, let me introduce you to these gentlemen. Meet Tomitake and Okanogi from the Self-Defense Force. They're your backup from the SDF. I'll let them introduce themselves. Nice to meet you, I'm Tomitake. I've been commanded to serve as auditor of this project. I look forward to working with you. The funding for our research is largely coming from the SDF. It's only natural for the SDF to assign a watchdog to make sure reasonable research is taking place. However, someone in a position like that should be my opponent. Why was someone in that position invited to this private party? Does that mean this auditor is on my side too? Seeing that thorough groundwork, I couldn't help but feel the strength of having a sponsor all over again. I won't be staying in Hinamizawa. I'll only come by routinely to check on the progress of the research. Oh, that's too bad. Hinamizawa is a beautiful place with clean air. Please come visit us anytime, outside of work too. Thank you. I guess I will. If he really is an auditor, I should maintain a good relationship with him. He'll hold the key to all future adjustments of our funding, so long as we continue drawing it from the SDF. I'm Okanogi. Nice to meet you. He's the commanding officer of the Mountain Dogs, one of our unconventional warfare units. They'll be stationed in Hinamizawa to provide you direct support, Major. Should I consider you my bodyguard then? Principal duty is guarding VIPs and preserving secrets. Think of them as your hands and feet and work them hard. Thank you. Tomitake seemed to be an honest type for a military man, but this Okanogi person looks the complete opposite. His main job is to preserve secrets, but I guess he's also good with espionage techniques like counterintelligence and information control. Looks much scarier in this artwork. Yes, that would explain his demeanour. Since the SDF is funding our research on Hinamizawa syndrome, of course this is considered a military operation. Therefore, this research has to be done in secret. That's why a unit like this is necessary. Besides, it's very reassuring to have someone capable of combat working under me. I should maintain a good relationship with him too. Okay, enough introductions. Come on, Tomitake, you can relax too. Let's put aside our ranks today and have a toast. Well, this is supposed to celebrate the establishment of the Irie Institute. Irie himself isn't here. That is his job after all. Irie is simply a puppet to fill a seat. Of course, I expect him to help me a little with his expertise, but he's ultimately an outsider. This was supposed to be a gathering where I could show my appreciation to those who helped me establish the Irie Institute, but it has turned into them thanking me for all of my efforts. I'm always the one to pour alcohol for the others, but today people are pouring alcohol in my glass. The new participants were trying to make me happy, and all the top people talked to me casually. They all praised my hard work and my efforts. My research is now recognised by many institutions, and I'm ready to spread my wings open wide. And all the people who are expecting some returns once the research accomplishes something are trying to curry favour with me. But right now, I'm just very grateful, regardless of their motives. Let's have a toast to wish the best of luck to Mia Takano and also to the new Irie Institute. Dr. Arai, please lead the toast. It's like a dream. I know. This is just the beginning, and I shouldn't be satisfied with this alone. But just for today, I can forget about everything else and enjoy this celebration. I'm not a heavy drinker, but the drinks taste good tonight, and the more I drink, the happier I get. This is really wonderful. To be called Major by Tomitake and the others is wonderful too. That's the rank my grandfather had during the war. It means I finally caught up with my grandfather. This is only the beginning. From here on, I intend to reach what my grandfather could not. This is the best night of my life. And it'll be the worst hangover of your life in the morning. I ended up leaving to fix my makeup. I'm filled with elation. I need to feel fresh air to calm myself down. My heart is about to explode because I'm so happy. The gathering is taking place a little distance away from the main building. The restroom is in the main building, so I need to walk across the hallway. A beautiful and well-maintained Japanese garden is visible from the hallway. It's raining. I usually don't like rain, but I don't mind it at all today. I feel like even the raindrops are congratulating me. The cool air feels pleasant on my hot skin. It took me a moment to notice how unsteady my footsteps had become. Maybe I drank a little too much. It isn't like me to drink more than I can handle. Although this is a party, I don't want to embarrass myself, so I decided to cool off a little by looking at the beautiful Japanese garden. I found an elegant chair set on the red carpet nearby and sat down on it. Since I was with the associates until now, I was forced to constantly be on my guard against embarrassing myself, but now that I was alone, I could let go and truly relax. When I look up to the sky, I realise it's still raining hard, but in the distance, the horizon is a little lighter. Maybe it won't be raining for much longer. Well, that's normal. Rain stops eventually. No matter how cold it is or how hard it's raining, rain stops eventually. I saw a pair of sandals and an umbrella, almost inviting me, so I took them into the garden. The tasteless laughter coming from the party sounds far away. I tilted the umbrella and looked up to the sky. I felt the raindrops hit my face, and gazed up at the sky for a while, forgetting all about my hair getting wet. I thought the rain would cool down my boiling heart, but as my body got cold, I started to feel miserable. My bare feet were all swollen, and the throbbing pain I felt made them seem twice their normal size. The gravel road continued forever. I didn't even know what direction I was headed in anymore. I could no longer hear my pursuer. I'd probably lost them by running through the woods like mad. My body was covered in scratches. I finally started to feel the pain from that. I felt both cold and hungry. There was no place nearby to take shelter from the rain. I was just on a little path in the woods. My worst fear was that I could end up heading back towards the orphanage, after bolting and losing my sense of direction. I'd crushed that man's finger. Didn't think I bit it off, but I was sure it would leave a scar. Taking that into consideration, it was very clear to me what kind of torture awaited me back at the orphanage. Therefore, I'd have to reach the House of Love and Mercy. If it had only been daytime, then I could have easily found the right way to go. However, with this rain, there was nothing I could do. But I couldn't stop. I had to keep walking until I reached that point. I wondered if Eriko and the others would escape safely. I didn't know how many people came after us, but at least one came after me. In other words, it meant they had a better chance. Would they reach the House of Love and Mercy? Were they drying themselves with soft towels? And if they still remembered me, would they say the towel to me too? It was so cold. I wanted to find shelter and sit down. There was nothing of the sort. I saw a tree that looked like I could take shelter under it, but the branches and leaves were dripping with water. It was then that I realised that the sky was gradually getting darker. Would this day end in rain? There were no streetlights where I was. Soon enough, it would be totally dark. Then I wouldn't be able to walk any further. I just wanted to sit down, even if it was raining. But if I did sit down, I probably wouldn't be able to stand up again. So I endured. If I hadn't escaped with Eriko and the others, I wouldn't have had to go through such misery. But compared to what I had to go through at the orphanage, this was nothing. Thinking about that was the only way to make myself move. But when I thought about that, it's true that this freezing cold rain was far better than my life at the orphanage. But that was only compared to life at the orphanage. Was it better than the normal lives of normal kids my age? I didn't even need to think about that. When my parents were alive, although we weren't rich, we led a normal life. The gentle smells and forgivable selfishness. The sound of my mother cooking breakfast in the morning. The sound of a newspaper being folded. Precious memories like that. I didn't need anything else. I had plenty of friends. I had fun at school. Didn't like my teacher, but I liked studying. I had everything I needed. That was enough for me. I never complained. I never did anything bad. So why was this happening to me? Everything went downhill after that train incident. The dire fate kept rolling along. That I never showed its good side to me. If the accident was my fault, then I could have accepted it. But it wasn't. I wasn't even there. I waited for my parents at home. I like going to the mall with them. We always had a meal at the restaurant in the mall. I always told them to let me know if they were going to the mall, but on that day they went without me while I went to my friend's house to play. My friend wasn't in, so I went back home. I didn't see anyone at home and found a note that they were going to the mall. I regretted going to my friend's house. I waited at home. They didn't come home. They were still gone by dinner time. I was getting hungry and got angry with my parents for leaving me. I thought they were having dinner at the mall restaurant without me. If I hadn't gone to my friend's house, I would be eating dinner at the restaurant too. I love the little flags that came with the kids' meals. I was collecting those flags. Yes, I was. I was trying to collect 20 of them, thinking that once I collected 20, something wonderful would happen. But I couldn't collect 20 of them. I only needed one more. If I had one more, maybe the accident wouldn't have happened. A very sad memory of a flag from a kid's meal. I kept waiting for my parents to come home. I was hungry, so I started to eat some dried fish. If I ate too much, my mother would find out, so I was careful not to gorge myself. Then the phone rang. I'm getting distracted by how cute that strawberry cushion is. I assumed it was from my parents. I answered the phone in an angry manner, but it wasn't them at all. What happened to the house? We'd rented it, so maybe someone else had already moved in. What happened to my room? What about my desk and all the flags that were in the right middle drawer? If it wasn't my house anymore, then where was I supposed to go? Even if it remained my house, my parents would be there to watch me or protect me. Just because I didn't have my parents to protect me, the whole world became so cold. How could anyone take me away from the house I was used to living in, just because my parents were gone? Why didn't they just leave me alone? They asked me many things. They tried to confirm many things. But how could I have understood any of the forms they gave me? I was asked a yes or no question. I had no choice but to answer yes. And before I knew it, I ended up at the orphanage. It was beyond heartless. I didn't do anything wrong. I was just a little girl. I had to sign so many papers, but why this? The warm and gentle world ended suddenly without advance notice, and I was thrown into the cruel and merciless world alone. Was this the real world? Did I have any allies at all? Just because my parents died and I didn't have any relatives, the world had become so sad. When is the die going to come up with a 6 instead of a 1 to make up a continuous series of the latter? Oh. Tears were pouring down my cheeks. The salty taste further saddened and irritated me. I couldn't do anything but cry. But no matter how hard I cried or pitied myself, the cold rain didn't warm my body or save me. I didn't even know where I was or in what direction I should go. Eriko showed me the map to the house of love and mercy when we were planning our escape, but we only learned the shortest route. I was completely lost. But strangely, after I finished crying, I felt a drowning streak behind myself. I once learned that tears wash away particles in the eyes, but there's a different purpose to them too. Tears also wash away what's in the heart. I clenched my fists and forced my feet to move. I headed in the direction that I believed to be correct on the gravel road. The rain was still pouring, and it was getting darker and darker. I roared at the sky amidst the rain. My sadness was turning into anger. You stupid God! Why? What have I done to deserve this? What did I do? I didn't do anything. I was just living a normal life, that's all. So why this? Dad told me there were good things and bad things in life, but neither lasts for long. That means this misery won't last that long either, right? I won't be all alone in this miserable place forever, right? Isn't that right? As I looked up, I felt the raindrops hit my face. There is no God. I knew that in my heart. But such disbelief wouldn't save me. If I believed he was there, I should have been saved. No, I needed him to be there. Was he going to answer me? Spooky. I heard thunder. Then I realised he was there. He was there and he was listening to me. In his eyes, everyone was supposed to be equal. And he was listening to me. I've gone through enough. More than enough. If I was too happy before, then I could take this misery. But I wasn't. I was living a normal life. If you ask me if I was happy, then sure, I was. But this is what I get in return? That's not fair at all. I heard thunder again. He was listening. I continued. If this fate of mine was your mistake, then let me be free. Please, end my misery and let me be happy again. But if this is in fact my fate, and I'm supposed to live this way until the end, then I don't want it. Kill me. Kill me now with your lightning. Just finish me off now. Come on. Kill me ruthlessly, right here and now. I heard thunder again. It was loud enough to make me shiver. Normally I'd just hide in the house and wait until that thunder went away. But on that day, I wasn't afraid. Come on, kill me. Miyoko Tanashi is right here. Just like you killed my parents, take my life too. The heavens replied to my provocation. They took aim at me, a lowly human who dared sling constant, insolent insults at them. That was my wish. I opened my arms. He's God, so he wouldn't miss me. However, I guess even God makes mistakes sometimes. Although he's supposed to be fair, he'd been unfair with me. Come on, kill me. Take me to heaven. But if you fail to kill me, then try turning my destiny around. Pitiful child. A flash from heaven. I thought I smelled something burning just before it hit. The sheer force knocked me to the ground. It was a strange experience. It was something that had just happened, but it already felt like it happened many years ago. I had no idea how long I was down for. I smelled something odd. The bad stench woke me up. When I looked, I saw that a huge tree behind me had been split open. Its leaves were smouldering. I looked up and saw sparks in the darkness. I couldn't understand what just happened. I just stood there. The thunderbolt had struck. Didn't strike me. Struck the tree behind me. I didn't get to die. He was telling me to keep walking in the woods in the cold rain. I won my bet with God. I bet my life. I bet my life against the lightning and thunder. It could have killed me instantly, but he missed, so he had to fix my life. I looked up at the sky, laughing and bragging that I was still alive. I heard thunder again. It was acknowledging its loss. Come on, God. Save me. I won the bet, so save me from this misery. Let's take a look at her other artworks. Oh. She doesn't have any. Okay. I stood there. I waited for God to do something while the rain poured down upon me, but he didn't answer me again. I couldn't hear the thunder anymore. Again, I felt the warm tears pour down my cheeks. What was I thinking? If there was a God in heaven, he wouldn't have let anything like this happen to me. My miserable life was the proof of God's non-existence. The darkness was about to swallow me utterly. Would I have to sleep out there? God must have wanted me to die slowly in this cold rain instead of granting me an instant death by lightning. I wish the sun would go away. I wish the sun would never rise. I wish that, as the woods had grown completely dark, my existence would be hidden by that darkness. I wish that I could just disappear. Had it been an eternity, or was it a matter of seconds? I couldn't even tell time in such darkness. It was then that I saw something. It was a light. I noticed it only because the woods were so dark. But was it really there? Had it been there this whole time? I felt like the light was inviting me towards it. It was a fluorescent light. I didn't normally like fluorescent lights, because I always thought they looked cold. But I didn't feel coldness from that way, right? I'd made myself believe the light was a guide sent by God. I had to believe, otherwise I wouldn't be saved. The light reflected in the puddle. It wasn't a muddy puddle. It was a puddle on asphalt, and had made it out of the woods and was on a paved road. The light was a street light. Being on a paved road didn't really resolve anything. It was just a country road. Take me home. It was a road that went through the woods, so there were no houses, no shops, and not even a single car going by. We weren't any streetlights on the road, so it was still very dark. My feet touched the asphalt. It felt so different from the gravel I'd been walking on earlier. It felt almost merciful. My feet were grown used to walking on gravel, but after feeling the softness of the asphalt, I never wanted to go back to the former again. I could only choose between heading left or heading right. I was grateful to God for leading me to this asphalt road, but I wished he'd given me a little more guidance. Such a little bit of luck could make up for all the unhappiness I'd gone through. And that was when I sensed his guidance. I saw another light in the distance. It was only on the right side. I headed towards it, and when I got there, I understood what it was. I was amazed to find it there. A telephone booth. Who would actually make a call in the middle of nowhere? A telephone booth in the countryside was rather unusual. There were plenty of red public phones all over, but I'd always thought telephone booths only existed in big cities. It almost looked as though the telephone booth had been put there as a punishment for doing something bad. When I thought that, I felt bad for the lonely booth. It reminded me of myself. Even if I went inside the telephone booth, what could I even do in there anyway? I really knew the answer to that question, but no matter what, I just had to get in there. The door squeaked as I opened it. There were lots of moths and other bugs flittering around the light. I usually hated bugs, but in that moment, I felt like they were my friends, sheltering from the rain like me. There was no heater, but it was still very warm inside of the booth. It sheltered me from the cold rain. Soon enough, I crumbled to the floor. The warmth from the fluorescent light embraced me gently, and I felt like it was telling me that it was okay to cry. But I had no more tears left, so I cried them all when the lightning struck. Aching scratches covered my body. My calves were in pain too. Everything hurt everywhere, and I didn't want to get up ever again. I wished I could fall asleep. But if I did that, the staff from the orphanage might find me. The windows on the booth were high up, so if I sat down I wouldn't be visible from the outside. But as it was the only shelter in these dark woods, the staff would be sure to check it. That was why I couldn't stay there for long. They weren't completely made of glass, so it was possible to hide inside one. My exhausted spirit understood that I had to move, but I just couldn't make myself. Maybe I was experiencing some kind of vision. Felt a strange calmness that I'd never experienced before. Hypothermia? I didn't feel that I was myself. It was very strange. I thought that maybe I was killed by that lightning. I'd assumed that I was still Miyoko Tanashi, but maybe I wasn't her at all. I seriously considered those things. Then I started to think that the telephone booth had something to do with it. Because God led me there. He couldn't have done so just because it was providing shelter from the rain. There had to be something else. I wondered what it was. Could there be something in the booth that could save me? But what? The telephone booth was used to make a phone call, but I didn't have any money. But then I noticed something that looked like a copper. My heart skipped a beat. The 10-yen coin I saw wasn't there before. Did I just miss it? Didn't think so. Must have just showed up. In other words, this 10-yen coin was guidance from God. I wonder if Takano is also from Hinamizawa and she's experiencing the hallucinations as well. I wonder, as Rachel would say. But who? There was no telephone group. In that case, I could only call a number I knew. Did God want me to do that then? There was only one coin. I could only call one number, and I couldn't talk for that long. I challenged God earlier, so it was just a matter of course to think that God was challenging me in return. I had only one chance, and he wanted me to test my luck with that chance. I left the phone booth and looked up at the sky. Then I yelled in my heart, "You're on, God!" I wanted who I could call. Who? My house? My parents were dead and I had no relatives. Even if I called, nobody would answer. Actually, the phone bill wouldn't have been paid for a long time, so the phone line would already be disconnected. My house was my lost life itself. No, the debris of my life. Calling home would simply be an expression of regret, which ran counter to the positive attitude of one trying to change their life. So surely using the coin to call my house was wrong, which meant I had to cast this 10-yen coin towards my future. Future? My future? What future, anyway? Then I heard a huge thunderclap, which cleared my mind. In that clear state of mind, I saw something from the past. It was the last sight of my father, his final moments on the hospital bed. Though suffering from pain, he tried to tell me something very important. By chance I'm to die, turn to Dr. Takano. Dr. Hifumi Takano. Say it for me. Hifumi Takano. That's right, Dr. Hifumi Takano. He's my former teacher. He'll help you. Dad. Many doctors came into the room in a hurry. He wanted to tell me something else, but the doctor stopped him from talking, so it wasn't audible. It shouldn't have been, but it was to me. I heard it, but I didn't want to hear him say it when I was suffering, so I pretended that I didn't. He said it while coughing. I heard it. They were numbers. I swallowed once. That's right. It was a phone number. He knew nobody would take me in because we had no relatives. He told me to get in touch with him, Dr. Hifumi Takano. He tried to tell me his phone number. What had I done? He tried so hard, using his last chance to tell me the most important thing. The thunder from earlier had made me remember it. The number I couldn't remember even once came out so smoothly. I dialed it in. This really was it. This was the number for my father's teacher, Dr. Takano. But my hand stopped just as I tried to put the coin in. What if I hadn't remembered it correctly? No, there was no need to hesitate. I had to believe in myself. This had to be the correct number. I had to dial it before I forgot again. I picked up the phone and put the coin in. Beep. I heard the dial tone on the other end. At that point, I decided to kill myself if it didn't work. I could go back to the woods and wait for another lightning bolt. I could lie down and let the rainwater drown me too. I could also fall asleep in the middle of the road and wait for a car to run me over. I made up my mind and put the coin in. I didn't hesitate any longer. Hello, Om Nom Nom. Thank you very much for the raid. It is very much appreciated. How are you? I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you are having a good day. Hello friends from Om Nom Nom stream, if you don't know. It is me, Amochi. I am struggling with ooh, nice. I'm struggling with my Stream Deck is what's happening. I am personally I'm saving watching Higurashi until after I have finished the game. So Oh, sorry, I didn't get your name right there. There we go. I can type things now. Hello, Rika. Yes, yeah, I managed to not spoil myself for... God, I'm so stupid. I managed to not spoil myself for the events of Matsuribayashi, so I'm gonna save watching until that point. Sorry, the reason I kept getting distracted there was because I was struggling with my stream deck, which isn't behaving the way I'm telling it to. So we've reached the point in Matsuri, we're still in the prologue. Mio is explaining to us how things came to be how they did, and she's having the second bit of the flashback towards escaping from the orphanage. I had to be careful. If you dial quickly, sometimes you can make mistakes. I was getting irritated and I almost made the phone number go vague in my head. I dialed the last digit and heard some electronic sounds on the other side. I hoped that I dialed the correct number. I didn't know what to say to Dr. Takano if it did connect. Where was I? What was I supposed to do? What was I supposed to ask him? I didn't know any of those things. Making a call isn't cheap. 1 10 coin would only buy me a short time to talk. The line must have connected then. I heard a ringtone. I only had a short time when someone answered the phone. I thought for a moment that I should put the phone down. Then I could at least get the coin back. Sound just died suddenly, so I could call back after sorting out my thoughts. But then someone answered. Hello, this is the Takano residence. Ah, there we go. I felt like I was suffocating. My memory had been correct. I couldn't tell the age of the speaker, but it was a grown man's voice. Anyone who was my father's teacher must have been quite old. Never mind that. I had to hurry and say something. Hurry, hurry. Are you Dr. Takano? Dr. Hifumi Takano? Yes, who is this? He must have been suspicious. Couldn't blame him. A stranger was asking him about his name. Of course he gets suspicious. I'm sorry, I'm Tanashi. Miyako Tanashi. Mr. Tanashi? Yes. My father told me to get in touch with you. His name is Takanitsu Tanashi. Tanashi... Ah, Tanashi! I remember him. His voice suddenly changed. Dr. Takano had remembered his old student. I'm his daughter. He told me to call you. Did something happen to him? Not good. I was going to run out of time. My parents died in a train accident, and I was told to call you. Tanashi's dead? I see. Both of them? I'm sorry to hear that. I knew him from when I was teaching at the college. He was a very hard-working young man. I think the last time I saw him was at the wedding. Obviously, he didn't know I was born, but he remembered my father. That was truly a stroke of luck. So, what did Tanashi want to tell me? Well, I didn't know what to say. I was only told to call him. How could I tell him that? My time was running out. I felt more and more anxious by the minute. Phone calls disconnected without notice, but somehow I sensed it. I only had enough time left for one sentence, so I decided to say one sentence filled with all of my hopes. Help me! The phone call got disconnected. Maybe he only heard part of what I was saying. I could only hope he was able to sense my despair. I couldn't hear anything from the receiver anymore, but I actually talked to Dr. Takano. I confirmed that Dr. Takano existed. He existed and he remembered my father. If he grieved over a student's death, he'd come visit my house, and he'd find out I was sent to an orphanage. Then he would come get me. That's when tears flowed down my cheeks again. I thought my life was hopeless. I never knew that finding even a grain of hope could make me feel so happy and strong. The voice I heard on the phone was so warm and dependable. My father must have thought about me for a long time in that hospital bed, and came up with a name that he could trust his daughter with. Dr. Hifumi Takano. So I could trust him. I had to believe that he would find me. But it might take more than just a few days. I'd have to wait patiently. A few days? A month? More? I could only wait patiently. Either way, I couldn't stay in the telephone box. The staff would easily find me there. I went out into the rain again. But this time, the rain felt a little warmer than before. I'd wished to die by lightning. But after that phone call... Sorry, it feels really, really loud. I'm sorry, I'm going to turn that down a bit. I was filled with hope and a will to live. I wanted to live, and that was why I felt pain all over my body. When I still wished to die, I didn't feel anything. I had to wait patiently until Dr. Takano picked me up. I had to get to the House of Love and Mercy. That would be the best place to wait for him. I don't think the orphanage would tell him I escaped to the House of Love and Mercy, but the house wouldn't stop me from calling him. All I'd have to do was call him again and let him know where I was. Take care, Om Nom Nom. Honestly, so do I. The minute I finish this stream, I'm going straight back to researching for a final paper for a class I'm in, which is due next Tuesday, so I've really got to get that done. Good luck. I believe in you. I wish you better luck at concentrating than I did. I was watching the Game Awards while trying to do reading earlier, and it was not working out for me. So, thank you. Kampai. But I didn't know where I could find the House of Love and Mercy. I couldn't see any signs anywhere, and I didn't even know what direction the orphanage I escaped from was in. But I couldn't stop. I had to walk. I had to find shelter. I had to find someone and ask for directions to the House of Love and Mercy. I had to keep going because I finally saw the light at the end of the tunnel. The chills and throbbing pain tormented me, but I couldn't die until I met Mr. Takano, Dr. Takano. I wished a car would come by. It was as if someone who lived in the if it was someone who lived in the area, I could ask, but the police wouldn't do me any good. I was sure the orphanage had already called the police about our escape, and they wouldn't be forgiving. The police were sure to send me back to the orphanage. Either way, I wished that someone would show up. Otherwise, I'd have to keep walking on the asphalt in darkness forever. How long did I walk? Still no car. Just as I couldn't help but think that maybe the world perished, leaving only me behind, a car showed up. I sensed the car coming up behind me, so I turned around. I saw the headlights approaching me. I thought for a moment, should I stand in the middle of the street to stop the car? It was so dark. I didn't think the car would notice if I just waved at it. But if I was standing in the middle of the street, I could get run over. While I thought, the car was getting closer and closer. When I made the phone call, I panicked and didn't know what to say. So with this car, I'd have to think very carefully. If I couldn't think of anything, I should just let the car go. Those thoughts vaguely on my mind, I was incredibly surprised when the car slammed the brakes with a screech and came to a stop. Maybe I wasn't all there after that miraculous experience of lightning striking near me. I'd half lost my mind in those dark woods, so I probably wasn't thinking very straight. Because the car had stopped after recognising me. The driver knew who I was. And the only people in the area who would recognise me were... Suddenly a chill ran through my whole body. I started to dash away. I heard a voice calling after me. I no longer had the strength to run. My feet were trembling and I couldn't make them cooperate. I realised then that I shouldn't have sat down in the telephone booth. That was why I couldn't keep running. I was suddenly grabbed from behind, the collar of my clothes almost choking me. Sorry for the flashing, folks. I heard fabric being ripped. I fell in a puddle and a staff member got on top of me. This time his finger wasn't in my mouth. All I could do was struggle. As I did so, I remembered all the scary stories Eriko and the others told me. All the torture the child who was caught had to endure. The drowned ducky punishment, the mass caterpillar punishment, and the splayed piggy punishment. The names of those eerie-sounding punishments came to mind. I screamed and struggled with all my might, but it was too late. I was shoved into the back seat of the car. Why couldn't they just let me go? Simple. They didn't want me talking about them to anyone. The staff were yelling and screaming while chasing me, but once we were in the car they went silent. It was like the Grim Reaper had come to get me. Whether I liked it or not, I'd come to terms with the fact that my luck had run out. But I'd called Dr. Takano, so I knew he'd come and get me. I didn't know when that would be, but I knew it would happen someday. So I wanted to live. I would be saved if I lived. I couldn't even imagine the kind of punishment that was waiting for me. But even so, I said to myself, I have to live. I'd already found the light at the end of the tunnel. All I had to do was endure until I'd reached it. The car stopped. We'd arrived at the front gate of the orphanage. The two staff members grabbed my shoulders so I wouldn't run. My shoulders were skinny, so it hurt a lot. I was scared. Scared of what I would have to go through. We went through the door, and I was finally sheltered from the rain. In a way, I wasn't sheltered at all, though. It was the middle of the night, and long past time to turn all the lights off. The orphanage should have been quiet. But I heard a noise. It was a strange noise. The noise of a shower. The noise of metal objects crashing into each other. And the staff's yelling and screaming. A chill went down my spine. What could I possibly write down to fully describe this fear? A staff member knocked on the door of the storage room, and the door opened. The moment it did, an angry roar issued from inside. The sight leapt into my eyes. I couldn't completely take in the bizarre scene before me. Two staff members were hitting a mat with bamboo swords while yelling violently. It was the mat used in, the one you use when you do gymnastics. But why was it rolled up like that? Oh no, my stomach is turning over. If you're, I A true crime connoisseur. The rolled-up mat was tied with a string and was standing up in the corner. The staff members kept hitting it. Usually words are said to a person, but why were they yelling at a rolled-up mat? The way they were hitting and yelling at it, it was as if they'd gone mad. But wait, I could see something sticking out from the top of the rolled-up mat. It was... let's see... whose shoes were those? All of a sudden, I froze and couldn't think anymore. One man stood in front of me. The man's pinky finger was wrapped in bandages. My eyes moved upwards from his pinky finger and met with his. The beast's eyes met mine, peering with intent to devour me. I squeezed out a voiceless scream. My voice didn't come out, so it was more like a goldfish opening and closing its mouth. The beast stuck his little finger in front of me and roared. I couldn't tell if it was a word or a meaningless shriek, but I was certain it was something abusive. I was scared. I didn't want to die. I wanted to live. I knew that Dr. Takano would show up to save me. That was why I had to live and submit myself to the fear. I'm sorry. Ah. The hand with the bandages grabbed my hair and dragged me along. All I could do was apologise and beg for forgiveness, while hoping the beast had even a tiny bit of mercy in him. I was like a broken, apologising doll. A mad doll that kept muttering apologies until its key wound down. I was their toy, shedding tears, coughing blood, and apologising in place of clicking gears. I could see into the shower room while he dragged me along. The door was open and I heard wailing from the inside. What I saw was very strange. There was a locker on its side in the shower. What an odd sight. A locker was taking a shower sideways. I'd never even imagined anything like it before. The locker was taking a cold shower while two staff members hit it with bamboo saws. That explained the metallic noise I heard before. The beast didn't want me to see that. He pulled my hair violently and twisted my neck, so I looked in the opposite direction. Then I realised. He didn't do that to stop me from watching the shower. He did it to make me look at something else. I saw a window and a courtyard. Usually it was too dark to see anything, but the lights were on and the courtyard was very bright. Then I saw it. Inside of the hen house, I saw... what is that? Blank and blank and blank. That hair was Eriko's. Blank? Blank? But why was she... That was far too... I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't want to die. I know Dr. Kano is coming to save me. I know he's coming. I love this music, can I just say? I was taken to the staff bathroom. It stunk of ammonia. I saw a which just doesn't fit in a bathroom. Why was this in the bathroom, I thought? He's not planning to me with is he? No way. No. Tanashi, this is your punishment for breaking the rules, okay? Everyone must follow the rules. If you don't, you get punished. Do you understand? I'm sorry. I'll never do it again. I'll do everything you tell me to. I promise, I really do. Please spare me. Please spare me from... No, it hurts, no. The abuse content warning's in the title for a reason, lads. Big oof. Scream cat emoji. The achievement is another chance. Only tips still. Right. Let's finish chapter 4. We'll do chapter 4, we'll finish for the night. How long have I been crying? I don't even know how long I've been comforted like this. My grandfather's hand is on my cheek to comfort me. I'm holding my hand lovingly and pressing my cheek against it. You okay? Grandpa? My grandfather put his other hand on top of my head. The warmth of his palms gradually calmed me down. Piles of documents were all around me. It was a mistake to sort through data while lying on a fluffy carpet. I must have fallen asleep and had a terrible dream. If you sleep facing down, the pressure on your chest makes it easier to have nightmares. It's getting quite late. Why don't you go to sleep, Miyoko? I'm fine. I took a nap, so I'm not sleepy anymore. I'm almost done, so I'm going to finish this up, okay? You have school tomorrow. You should go to sleep, otherwise you'll get scolded for yawning again. Been going to bed late recently. Because of that, I yawned a lot at school. My teacher must have written a note to my grandfather. I'm fine. I'll go to sleep as soon as I'm done. So please, let me finish, okay? Besides, you shouldn't mind me. Go back to your study and continue with your article. The day for him to present his findings is approaching. He's been working so hard, devoting himself to his research, but there's unfortunately a limit to what an individual can do. He needs a collaborator in order to go further with his research. He has to explain that his investigation could be the key to solving the mysteries of human behaviour and make people understand just how important his work is. But this research is about a very complicated subject, so we couldn't seek assistance from just anyone. Someone will be able to help him one day. Believing that, my grandfather earnestly continued his research. I wanted to help him more, but all I can do is sort through his data and tidy up his materials. I also assist him around the house so he can concentrate more on his research. He always tells me how helpful I am, but that isn't enough for me. I will study hard, get into a good college, and learn many things. So I can... Thank you for the follow, Om Nom Nom. It is appreciated. I just got the notification about that. Sorry, I was checking a thing there. To get into a good college and learn many things so I can actually be of assistance to his research. I'm a mediocre student right now and I don't particularly like school, but I will do it. I want to help my grandfather. If his heart were to fail and he couldn't continue his research, I wouldn't hesitate to cut open my chest and offer up my heart for him. If he needs lungs, I'll give him my lungs. If any of his organs fail, I'll give him mine. There's nothing strange about those feelings. They're perfectly normal ones. Waggles eyebrows. If you'd found me even a day later, I might not have been alive. Or even if I lived, it would either be without my body intact or with my mind lost to me. I'm alive because my grandfather came to save me. If he hadn't rushed to find me, I wouldn't be here, so I won't hesitate to give up my life for him. Moreover, I'd be more than happy to do that. Even though I want to be with him forever, human lives aren't immortal. Just like how my parents died, it happens so suddenly, without any warning. I'll never heal from my parents' deaths, but now that I have my grandfather, I'm not sad. However, his existence isn't eternal either. He may disappear all of a sudden for any unexpected reason. Just like my parents. That's why I wish to be a part of him. That way, no matter what happens, we'll be together forever. I don't want to be alone ever again. I want to be with my grandfather forever. I want to help him forever. Okay, then be sure to go to sleep after you finish this, okay? Promise? I promise. We pinky promised after that. We smiled at each other and my grandfather went back to his study. The dried up tears are making my cheeks itch. I headed to the bathroom to wash my face and brush my teeth. I looked at my face in the mirror. None of my grandfather's features are recognisable on my face. Of course they aren't. We're not related. He must have a family too, but I've never heard about them. He doesn't seem to want to talk about that subject, so I don't ever ask him about it. I don't care if he has real grandchildren or not. Even if I'm not related to him, I'm a granddaughter of Hifumi Takano. I'm not just a granddaughter either. I want to be more than that. I don't want a parent and child relationship, nor any other one. I want something more certain that binds our souls, something that not even a tragedy can destroy. I am Miyoko Takano, Hifumi Takano's granddaughter. Maybe it should be Mio instead. That's what my grandfather sometimes calls me. I want to succeed Hifumi's spirit. Since his name counts from 1 to 3, I want us to share that 3 and be the 4th in his line. Today, my name changes. I wrote that new name in the mirror. Mio Takano. What a wonderful name for the new me. I know Mio's a deplorable bad guy, but boy howdy if anyone has justifiable reasons for being, everything she is. It's Mio. It seems a lot like she basically put all of her self-worth into being a researcher, and so that became like the only thing that mattered. So, the destruction of Hinamizawa is, in her mind, perfectly, it's perfectly justifiable, it seems. So I'm just gonna let my captioner catch up. Okay. Well, it seems to be working, so... Colonel, sir, good to see you again. Takano, come on, no more Colonel stuff. No. I was worried when I heard you were ill. You sure look great now. My grandfather always told me he doesn't have any friends. He used to tell me everyone died in the war. But that's not true. He has one very close friend. This is him. He's an elderly man my grandfather calls Colonel Koizumi. I don't know exactly where they met, but every time they get together, all they talk about is the military and the war. So I guess that's where they met. Look at you, Mio. How tall are you now? We just had a physical checkup the other day, and I think I've grown 2 centimetres. That's wonderful. Good girl. Make sure you eat well, play a lot, and grow big and healthy. I envy you, Takano, for having such a good, cute granddaughter. Mr. Koizumi knows my grandfather and I aren't related, but he always calls me his granddaughter. That makes me very happy, so I poured a little more black tea in his cup. After I finished serving tea, I left with a bow. I want to stay and listen to them talk, but I guess my grandfather doesn't want me to hear stories of the war, so he always makes me leave. I left before I was told to, but having to leave doesn't mean I need to go to a different room. I just headed to the other side of the huge living room instead. Although I'm not right by them, I can still sit on a sofa and listen to their conversation. And if they need something, I can come help them right away. I try to earn points that way to prove I'm useful. I sat on a sofa away from them and started reading an encyclopedia. While doing that, I tried to listen to their conversation. That's great. Professor said they want to come over on Sunday, the week after next. Really? Thank you very much, Koizumi. Don't mention it. This just means the report you wrote was that interesting, Takano. They're showing a lot of interest. They even said it's possible the research could receive the Nobel Prize. A Nobel Prize? Ah, that sounds wonderful. My grandfather laughed. Since he laughed so cheerfully, something great must have happened. Mr. Koizumi must have shown the society the essay my grandfather was about to announce and gauged their reactions. And supposedly they found it extremely interesting. That means they recognise the value of my grandfather's research. That makes me happy too. But what worries me is that you'll get infected with the syndrome yourself. Make sure you don't end up clawing out your own throat, okay? Well, maybe I'm already infected, but Hinamizawa syndrome is harmless if you live a normal life. It was a dangerous disease back when the villagers believed on Oyashiro-sama and bound themselves with strict rules, but those have faded over time and now people rarely show symptoms unless something major happens. After that many cases, patient's emotional state has a lot to do with how the syndrome develops. As long as you live a normal life, there's nothing to worry about. So I guess that's why, my brain, words all lost. I guess that's why the people who go like full ham, they always have a breaking point. So Mio's breaking point was Mion's Shion breaking point was what happened to Satoshi. Satoko's breaking point presumably was I guess either the abuse or the loss of Satoshi. Rainer's is obviously the fact that Rina and the other person came into her life, and Keiichi's is, I guess, knowing about the murder and being told to suspect his friends. Keiichi's breaking point is rather less dramatic than the others, especially Mion's and Toko's, has to be said. Shion's, I should say. I still can't get in my head which one is actually Mion at birth and which one's Shion at birth, so it's easier just to say Mion Shion and assume that anybody who knows the series knows what I'm talking about. As long as you live a normal life, there's nothing to worry about. So when one is under a lot of pressure, like during the war, the disease gets worse. That's right. Well, there's nothing to worry about. Subjective symptom of the initial stages is a paranoia akin to that of depression. Once you notice it happening, you can teach yourself to relax emotionally and physically by using my breathing method, and you should at least get 9 hours of sleep a night over a 1-week period. It's not how you prevent it from worsening. In fact, of all the Hinamizawan soldiers under my direction, not even one died mysteriously. As he talks, grandfather starts demonstrating the Takano breathing method and bizarre exercising technique. According to him, this technique relaxes the body and lets blood and lymphatic fluid flow smoothly. As a result, you relax emotionally too. But the movements involved in the technique are so weird. I had to look away because my grandfather looked so silly. That was the one thing about his research I felt bad about. Oh, grandfather asked me to do this exercise too. I don't want to make him sad, so I do it when instructed. I'm glad to hear that. Hideo Noguchi died in the middle of his research, so please be careful, okay? However, Dr. Noguchi's great work is still acknowledged even after his death. As a researcher, I'm sure that was his long-term goal. Grandfather tells me about Hideo Noguchi often. He was born as the son of a poor farmer, but he studied hard and became a doctor. However, he was mistreated because of his background, so he left Japan. He moved to the United States. There, he made many accomplishments as a researcher. He discovered a vaccine for yellow fever. Grandfather's background is somewhat similar to his, so he often said that of all the researchers, he admired him the most. Hideo Noguchi died in North Africa. While he discovered a vaccine for yellow fever, he heard it wasn't effective on yellow fever in North Africa. He went there to research it, came down with the disease, and died. A researcher losing his life for the research. Sometimes that is a test of the researcher's courage. In that sense, grandfather is very brave to visit Hinamizawa himself to gather information. He himself says he may already be infected. Although my grandfather estimates from ancient texts that Hinamizawa syndrome was only many centuries ago, and now it's no different from the usual bacteria that share a symbiosis with humans. Many people became ill with the disease during the war, but that was because they were in an extremely abnormal situation. In today's peaceful environment, it's almost impossible for a person to develop symptoms. He sounds very optimistic, but he never brought me with him to Hinamizawa, so maybe he isn't as optimistic as all that. However, since I live with him, there's a possibility that I'm already infected as well. But I'm not worried at all. That's because my grandfather has taught me that as long as I maintain myself physically and emotionally, I won't develop any symptoms. I know all about the horrible terminal symptoms of Hinamizawa syndrome, but I'm not overly fearful of them. Grandfather is enjoying his conversation with Mr. Koizumi. That's understandable. Mr. Koizumi told him some people show great interest in his research. They even want to come over on Sunday, the week after next, to meet and talk to him. With the rapid advance in modern medicine, unexplored frontiers are steadily dwindling. Was it possible that Hinamizawa syndrome my grandfather discovered might be a new continent in the field? It'll be decided in 2 weeks. Sounds like there'll be more than one person coming up. And it also sounds like they're all important people in the society. They're all rich and famous, yet they aren't satisfied with just that. They all want to be involved with something that's worth an international award. This is a chance to gain assistance and sponsorship at the same time. I'll see you in 2 weeks. I'll make sure to be here. Good luck. Thank you very much. I owe you everything. It's too early to say that. Let's wait until you find some sponsors. When that time comes, let's have a toast with that treasured wine of yours. That was the last of their conversation. My grandfather kept his head bowed until Mr. Koizumi was gone. Sounded like he set up this great chance for my grandfather, so I bowed my head just like him. Did you hear that? Finally, there's a chance for me. There are people who are interested in my report. I know, I heard. Now you'll have people to fund you and people to help with your research. Well, it's not set in stone yet. Although he didn't want to admit it, he had a good feeling about it. The research he'd conducted all alone was finally about to gain recognition. Sunday, the week after next? Fine, I'll be busy. Their first impression depends on my presentation. I have to rearrange my data. No, I should probably practice explaining things in front of people. Anyway, I have to make sure I don't forget anything. It'll be a lot of work to rearrange your data. Your handwriting's bad, so maybe you should write bigger. Anyway, I'll be busy. The next 2 weeks will go by fast. You're right. I'll help you too. All the formalin jars have to be dusted. Also, we need to straighten our rolled out documents. Do you think leaving them laid out under the rug overnight would fix it? We have plenty of things to do. Mia, could you help me? Of course. I'll skip school for it. You can't miss school. We laughed together, thrust our fists into the air, and motivated ourselves to work hard to the week after next. Since that day, my grandfather spent more time in his study. It's not easy to create a report that you're going to show other people. Copying machines hadn't been invented back then, so everything had to be handwritten. He knows it's somewhere, but he just can't remember where he put the data he needs. As for me, I have to make sure I have enough guest cups to serve tea, so I'm counting them. Do I have enough tea leaves? Maybe I should get something to go with tea. My grandfather knows nothing about these things. There's a whole list of chores to do. I need to clean the windows so the room will be bright. What else? The 2 weeks pass quickly while we busy ourselves getting things done. What a wonderful 2 weeks it is. I can finally feel that I'm actually doing something to help my grandfather with his research. I hope the day of the meeting will be a memorable one for my grandfather. I hope that day will be a beautiful and clear one. Read noises. Just in general. Just as I wished, the day is beautiful. Oops, wrong button. Evening. My grandfather, having dressed formally, paced around his study nervously. I'm also in a beautiful dress. I've only worn it once before at my piano recital, but I'm not nervous like my grandfather. His silly nervousness actually relaxes me. Are they here yet? Grandfather looked out the window. Then a black car stopped in front of the gate. Back then, a car was a luxury item. I don't think I even had one classmate whose family owned a car, so it only makes sense that the men coming out the car looked respectable. Grandfather and I ran up to welcome them. Welcome, I'm Takano. Thank you for coming today. May I take your jacket? I greeted them and filled the role we decided ahead of time, though my being relaxed by my grandfather's silliness ended at that point. Both my grandfather and I were stiff with anxiety as we greeted them now that the moment was here. Nice to meet you, Doctor. And hello, young lady. Are you his granddaughter? Yes, Mio. Please say hello. Very nice to meet you. I'm Mio Takano. What a good girl. I'm here in place of Dr. Koizumi. Something came up and he can't make it today. He's very sorry. I see. I'm sorry to hear that. The person who set up everything isn't here. My grandfather even had his treasured wine ready, just as they promised 2 weeks ago. Everyone, let me introduce you. This is Dr. Hifumi Takano. Dr. Takano was a leading member of the Research Center for the Prevention of Epidemics in Manchuria during the war. He made many advances in developing synthetic food and synthetic alcohol as measures against malnutrition and ration shortages. Nice to meet you. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you for having me. The men are even older than my grandfather. They take off their hats one at a time to greet him. Their beards, expensive-looking canes, and glasses all tell me they're very high up in the society. Grandfather bows to each one of them. Everyone, please come into the study. Please excuse the mess. Come in, come in. Me'll serve tea for everyone. Yes. I wasn't nervous at all earlier, but now I think I'm the most nervous one. I'm not the one making the presentation, and I'm not the one being evaluated, so it's ridiculous that I'm feeling so nervous. I don't know if I should use that as my excuse, but I was so nervous that I looked over the thermos I'd filled to the brim with hot water, and ruined the black tea I'd chosen specifically for the day. I apologised to my grandfather and started to boil water again. I just need enough for the guests. By the time I had cups of tea and cookies ready, Grandfather's presentation was at its key part. It pierces the blood or lymph vessels and spreads to the spinal cord, and from there it travels along the cerebrospinal fluid to the brain. I've confirmed many cases of encephalitis after autopsies. Eosinophilic meningoencephalitis, that word, is known to be caused by roundworm, and we predict this behaviour to be extremely similar, Grandfather said, walking between samples and formalin jars and pointing to several as he gave his explanation. There are over 100 formalin jars in here with bits of brains in them. They were all very dusty, so I spent a few days cleaning them. I'm rather proud to see the sparkling jars all lined up like this. However, roundworms induce an extremely wide range of symptoms. A headache, narcosis, derangement. None of these are characteristic symptoms of roundworm. On the other hand, symptoms of Higurashi syndrome are very specific to that disease. You're saying one of them is to clear out one's own throat, yes? Exactly. Some soldiers witnessed it just before their fellows died. Such self-mutilation was never seen before in any disease. It only occurs in Higurashi syndrome. Also, since that symptom was only seen with terminal stage patients, I believe that's a means of exodus, something we see before in several parasites. Parasites mature inside of an organism, reproduce, then leave the host and look for the next one. So what do you think about the fact that the cases were only seen in the soldiers from Higurashi, even though other soldiers touched their blood, which must have been full of eggs or larvae? Don't you think there's a possibility of them getting infected? I suspect of things like an incubation period, but since it was limited to people from the Higurashi region, I believe something such as the unique local climate must play a role. I'll talk about that in the next part, but the ancient indigenous beliefs of Higurashi have... That can't be possible, Dr. Takano. I've never heard of parasites behaving socially. Well, that is one of the revolutionary discoveries in the Higurashi syndrome. The elderly gentlemen mumbled to each other while pointing at the data. With that, I finally realised things aren't going too well. Dr. Takano, I've been reviewing your data while listening to your gracious presentation. First of all, it is simply impossible for parasites to control human minds. Human thoughts are controlled by the brain, which is a work of art created by God. Furthermore, ideology is an extremely advanced aspect of human thought. It's an advanced capability bestowed only to humans on this planet. This is just giving me horrendous flashbacks to the shit that I've been reading for the last semester. I say that pejoratively. It's actually super interesting. It's just difficult for me to get my head around. And also, all the stuff that I've been reading or have been experiencing in here. Just, ugh. The formation of ideology. Ideology as a religion. Scream cat emoji. Yet you would say parasites intervene in that? Please, that's absurd. I agree. Ideology can also be considered a manner of thought that prioritises the whole over the individual. In other words, that's the most important prerequisite condition for a society. There's no way parasites would be gifted with that when their only demand is to pass on their genes. In the field of biology, there's never once been a discovery of sociality or eusociality within parasites. But there are cases of parasites interfering with the host behaviour. You're misunderstanding one thing, Dr. Takano. The principle that drives parasites capable of controlling the host is always reproduction and propagation. It's only that primitive concept. Even in the example you used before of a rat infected with Toxoplasma gondii losing its aversion to cats, the altered behaviour is simply a means to let the host be eaten by a better host in order to change hosts. Just like a grasshopper infected with a horsehair worm drowning itself. Once a horsehair worm matures, it becomes aquatic. When that happens, it guides a grasshopper to the water in transit, then enters the environment it's drowned for. Exactly. The suicidal act of clawing out one's throat corresponds to that in the case of Higurashi syndrome. For example, guinea worms escape the body by having the host scratch the affected area. Indeed, the purpose of all these parasites is reproduction. For them to infest the brain, God's masterpiece. No, infecting the brain itself isn't that strange. But to say they infest it and influence human ideology is frankly delusional. In fact, that's a dangerous idea. I don't think it's that strange that Higurashi, an isolated culture, developed its own unique faith. There are actually many examples of that all over Japan. So are you saying that all of them were due to parasites? God, there was a really weird sensation and I just realised it was my controller reconnecting itself. My whole desk vibrated, but it's because my controller's been having problems recently. Or were they all due to cultural reasons, except the one in Higurashi, which is caused by parasites? How do you establish the distinction? Well, as I said in my autopsies on the Higurashi soldiers who died in the war, there was sufficient evidence to believe... Excuse me, Dr. Takano. I don't think you've gathered enough case studies to call it clinical data. Furthermore, as you said, it was during the war. I mean, as I explain in the next part, Higurashi syndrome develops when one experiences suspicion, nervousness and stress and becomes emotionally unbalanced. I think it's a unique approach to suspect some manner of commonality if there were several cases of unique himself self-mutilation, such as clawing one's throat out. Yet, that's all the more reason it's unreliable. Maybe it was just a coincidence that such rare cases happened under abnormal circumstances like the war. Believe you witnessed the convergence of coincidences and trapped it inside a gestalt tissue, deluding yourself into finding a pattern. To prove otherwise, you need an enormous amount of clinical data on Hinamizawa syndrome patients, but ethically, that's impossible to prove. Nature's act of recognising it as a curse suggests it's more within the realm of culture-bound syndromes, and you think this is a delusional parasitic disease? I'm just going to unplug this controller because it's misbehaving and also running away from me. I hate to say this, but I think you admire the beliefs of the Hinamizawans a little too much, and as a result, you yourself have been taken in by the culture-bound reactive syndrome. Actually, that happens quite often with people who research more unusual fields of study. We're trying to be careful ourselves. The more they talk, the paler my grandfather's face hiccups become. I was just stunned myself. We've never heard of parasites like that. It's impossible. It was just a coincidence and there isn't enough data. The talk goes on, and every time grandfather says something, they dismiss it like that. Before he knew it, my grandfather could only hold his silence before their criticism. Well, no revolutionary discovery is accepted at first. Maybe this research of yours is one of those things. Even if it's ridiculed at first, it may achieve recognition in later years. That happens all the time. I'm just an amateur. Just a private researcher who didn't graduate from an elite college, nor do I belong to any academic league. I don't have any connections with experts or research centres. That's why this is all I can do. Is the Hinamizawa syndrome real, or is it just my delusion, like you will say it is? To find out, I need your help. Of course, if this was the discovery of the century, it would create a major uproar. After all, you're suggesting that human culture and ideology is all the will of parasites, and our frontal lobe is a place for them to live. Haha, what an audacious theory. If a link between the existence of this Hinamizawa syndrome and the disease carries belief in Oyashiro-sama could be established, then it would be possible to explain all religions, no, all cultural divisions on Earth. What a magnificent and unique idea. Dr. Takano, instead of showing people like us your ISIS in secret, you should publish a book about it for the general public. Grandfather looks at the ground, his fist trembling a little, but the words were far too cruel. I don't know anything about academics. I'm just a little girl. I don't know exactly what they're talking about, but Grandfather worked so hard by himself until today. But to prove his research and delve further into it, he needs sponsors. Yet the sponsors are casting him away, calling his research a delusion. That's outrageous. Like asking which came first, the chicken or the egg. Besides, if his research was at the level these cheeky men want to see, he wouldn't need their help. But they're saying they can't help him unless they see some results that are beyond the level of private research. In any field, doesn't research always start out with just a little idea? If you can prove its existence beforehand, then what's the point of researching it to begin with? If a wild idea can't be the subject of research, how did we gain any knowledge at all? But never mind that. When Mr. Koizumi came 2 weeks ago, didn't he say they were really interested in his research? What's going on? This is the complete opposite of what he said. Yes, I think this is very interesting research. The human brain still holds many secrets. Dr. Takano's idea is an extremely unique one. Seems impossible to ignore, especially from a eugenics perspective. Humans are not God's children. We're simply animals who underwent the baptisms of evolution. As such, according to Darwin, there'll be differences in that evolution based on environment. In other words, humans can be either superior or inferior. As a nation, we must think how we can maintain good bloodlines and how we can leave good genes behind. If we do not raise it as national policy and research towards it, then by the next century, mankind may fall to a fatal position on the hierarchy. Dr. Kano's research has the potential of encompassing more than just parasitic diseases. Screaming cat emoji continues. If the evil inferior humans we shouldn't let breed can actually be explained away by disease instead of genetics, then it becomes possible to correct their behaviour through surgery. As a result, we can leave wonderful people for our future. From the eugenics point of view, Dr. Takano's research should get started immediately. It's possible this could be the greatest discovery since Moni's invention of the lobotomy. Causality between infectious diseases and an individual's nature could be established. This would be more than Nobel Prize-worthy. Koizumi, thank you for giving us this chance. Takano is a single-minded and passionate man, but he is not good at dealing with people. He's been working on his research all by himself, but now he's hit the limit of what one person can do, and he needs help. Please, everyone, listen to what he has to say. You don't even need to ask, Sensei. We're the ones who should be thanking you for this opportunity. We're already willing to help him. In fact, the more urgent matter will be arranging jurisdictions within society. I'd like to thank you for giving me an opportunity to be involved in such a unique research project at this age. There was a knock on the door. The sliding door opened and the owner peeked in. Excuse me, there's someone asking for you. May I bring him? Someone? Who could it be? The owner whispered into Koizumi's ear, and his face turned pale all of a sudden. Please, let him in. No, I'll come greet him with you. As Koizumi stood up, 2 pairs of footsteps reached the door. Sensei, I didn't expect you to be here. Koizumi, long time no see. I have something I need to tell you today. Yes, if you need to tell me something, I'm all ears. Please, go ahead. I guess I should say teacher or boss or something like that. The old man known as Koizumi was not someone whose status could be taken lightly. Though he'd retired, he was still powerful enough to wield great influence as a fixer. So from his meek attitude, it was easy to figure out what kind of person this man must be. The old man held onto his bodyguard's shoulder as he walked. He had an expensive-looking cane in his other hand. He couldn't even walk on his own because of his old age, but his intense, commanding presence hadn't declined one bit. Get straight to the point. Your friend's research. You need to put a stop to it. Huh? What do you mean? Koizumi. He must take his knowledge of Hinamizawa syndrome to his grave. Nobody should touch it. If anyone looks into it, well, if you poke a bush, a snake will come out. A big fat snake too. It would pay me to just watch you get swallowed by it. That's why I'm here to give you some advice. Can your friends wait for a little? So how about it? Do you want to have some drinks with me in a different room? Yes, I'll come with you straight away. Koizumi realised he was being pressured. He didn't know which direction it was coming from, but clearly some authorities weren't comfortable with the research on Hinamizawa syndrome and were trying to stop him from supporting it. Koizumi, do you remember the Marco Polo Bridge incident? And here we get the explanation that Koizumi gave us earlier about it potentially causing morale issues. This is utter nonsense. Came here today expecting to hear a more objective side. Normally we wouldn't come all the way here for something like this, but since Koizumi asked, we didn't have a choice. This really was a waste of time, but in a way it was a good thing we came. We were able to give you some advice. You should take up bonsai instead of wasting the rest of your life on this. Bonsai is great. I agree. It's not healthy to just stare at formalin jars in a study. But it sure is a unique subject. If you want, I'll introduce you to the chief of a publishing company. The general public loves things like this, you know. They're not even trying to hide their hostility. They're laughing at my grandfather, denouncing him and saying things to denigrate not only his research but his personality as well. They're simply trying to provoke him. Any response would just be giving them what they want. Even in this very moment, grandfather tried to remain a noble researcher and a proud human being. He's no longer trembling. On the contrary, he apologised to them for taking up their time and told them he had no intention of keeping them any longer. We'll give this article back to you, though it'd be so much easier if we could actually call it an article. One of the elderly gentlemen tossed it back to him. Grandfather couldn't catch it in time. The article he worked so hard on fell onto the floor, and the paper scattered all over the carpet. The elderly gentleman left the study without even apologising for it. Everyone else followed suit. As they left, they trod all over my grandfather's article. Looked like grandfather's expression didn't change, but I could see it warping. I could see the wall of research grandfather bore crunching and warping sadly. I jumped. I grabbed onto the elderly gentleman's leg. I don't hate him. If I were asked if I hated him or not, the answer would be yes, but that's not the point here. What I really can't stand is this foot stepping all over my grandfather's article. Don't step on it. Don't step on it. Grandpa worked so hard on it. Don't step on it. I just want to move the foot that's standing on his papers, but the foot doesn't move, no matter how hard I push or pull, as if it's rooted to the floor. I felt someone grabbing me from behind. It was my grandfather. Please excuse my granddaughter. Don't worry about this. We'll clean it up. Don't step on them. I'm telling you not to step on my grandpa's article. My screams don't mean a thing to them. They completely ignored my screams. They continued to step on the papers and left the study. I guess Mio's trying to take advantage of them now to get this research done. Only my grandfather and I remain there now. My grandfather's still grabbing the back of my collar. I don't have any words left to say, only cries. My grandfather is determined not to show any emotion. He doesn't even open his mouth, so I have to cry for him. Just then, my grandfather slapped me in the face. That startled me. I'm crying for him, so why did he slap me? Then I understand. Grandfather is the one who wants to cry, but he's enduring, so I shouldn't cry either. I wipe my eyes and my runny nose. Then I silently turn my eyes to the papers on the carpet, just like my grandfather. Sorry, Mia. I don't understand why he's apologising. I thought he was going to complain about their rudeness. If I'd worked harder, this wouldn't have happened. Until today, you helped me so much, and it was all for nothing. Sorry about that. How courageous he is. Even after that disaster, he's still concerned about me. I shook my head and put my hands on the floor. I tried to gather up the papers, but then they began to fall. My tears are overflowing again, hearing the ink on the papers. These are all handwritten by grandfather. He was so happy that finally there was someone who understood his research. He was so happy. He spent all night writing these, but they stepped on them. They might as well have stepped on my grandfather's very soul. I didn't work hard enough. If I'd done more, this wouldn't have happened. Sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll work even harder. I won't give up because of something like this. I don't know if he's saying that to me or himself. Don't worry, God is watching. I have to believe that I'll gain recognition. That day will come. That's why I have to keep working harder. Grandfather says that all the time, but I know the truth. God only plays with people's fate. He doesn't save anyone out of goodwill. That's why he let this happen to my grandfather, even though he's worked so hard and so humbly until today. That's why he let such a horrible thing happen to me when I was still an innocent girl. Grandfather keeps repeating himself, but I know the truth. God exists. The existence Grandfather believes in is real. But there's no mercy to be found in God. He delivers unreasonable fates and makes us call it a challenge. I can't tell my grandfather that, of course. I asked God once more, like I did on the day of the thunderstorm. Why? Why can't you give me my grandfather's effort and hard work the recognition it deserves? Grandfather told me he'll gather up the papers, so I should put away the teacups. I nodded silently and put the teacups that hadn't even been touched onto the serving cart. As I pushed it out of the study, Grandfather told me. He told me to close the door after I leave. I always close the door when I leave. He doesn't need to remind me, but that's what he wants, so without saying anything, I closed the door. Then, as I walked away from the study, I heard my grandfather sobbing. Tears filled my eyes once more. Sadness and disappointment. I almost feel angry with myself for not being able to do anything for him. Then I felt a cool breeze on my wet cheeks. The breeze was blowing in from a cracked open window. The curtain was fluffing gently in that breeze. I heard the cry of the Higurashi. As I listened to them, I calmed down gradually. If I can ease Grandfather's pain by crying, I'll cry in his place. But that won't help. On the contrary, he started to cry because I did. I'm being useless here. I remember that day. I remember the reason why I'm alive now. If he hadn't come and saved me, I would have spent the last days of my life lying in the corner of the bathroom as a human-shaped piece of meat. Grandfather saved me. He gave me back my rights. The right to walk, the right to stand up, the right to wear clothes, the right to eat, the right to speak, and the right to think. In other words, the right to live as a human being. Grandfather took action right after he got the phone call from me. He found my house, and he found out which orphanage I was sent to, after struggling through the sloppily filed records of the public office. Then he saved me. Of course, he was working on his research then. He spent his precious research time on saving me, a perfect stranger. I vowed that if his heart failed, I'd rip my heart out and give it to him. But of course his heart's fine, so he doesn't need a heart. He needs something else equally important. That's something only I can give him in this whole world. I clenched my fists, and held them so tightly that my nails left marks. I now know what I'm supposed to do with this new life as Mio Takano. I finally know. I know the reason why the new me was born. I know the purpose of Mio Takano. To fulfill a wish and breathe a desired future. The strength of a string is how strong your will is. A noble and strong wish will come true. I thought I knew of my grandfather's greatness, but I actually didn't know the half of it. For me to be able to really help him, I have to reach his level. All my lessons lead back to my grandfather. There wasn't a single subject I could ignore. Right now, studying hard is what I can do for him. Dance remix of the theme. Been a teacher for a long time, but I've never seen such a hard-working student. You've learned not only academically, but socially as well. You've made a great deal of friends. I have a goal which I can only reach by studying hard. Also, I know how powerless an isolated genius is. That's why I needed to learn how to socialise. That's not enough. I'm not even close to where I want to be. Entering college is only a step forward. What matters is what I learn there. I'm not even close. I'm not even close to being able to help my grandfather. I'm so proud of you. You can go to Tokyo or Ochanomizu University or any college of your choice. Nothing will stop you. The most important thing for you is that the school will teach you what you want to learn. A big decision that inhabits a tiny soul. If my life is heavier than the earth, then my decision is heavier than the earth. Do I have what I need to be able to truly understand Hinamazawa syndrome and help Grandfather in his research? I don't need compromises or excuses. The heights I seek are lofty and precipitous. This isn't enough, not even close. My classmates are such idiots, acting as if they're winners in life just because they've entered the school. College is simply a place to learn what I need to know. If the self-proclaimed best school isn't worth my time, I'm not interested. I didn't expect a talented woman like you to end up at this parasite research centre. I'm sure everyone wanted you, huh? I assume you were interested in something bigger. I want to study and research parasites. I've worked hard to earn the right to study here. Aren't I qualified to learn? Yes, of course. There's no reason why we'd refuse someone who got the top score in the entrance exam. Welcome to the Parasite Research Centre. People usually aren't that interested in our field. There aren't too many researchers who study it. That's why there's still a lot of unknown elements compared to other fields. It's quite true. The study of parasites is a mysterious world. Or rather, it's an ignorant one. An ignorant world with a preconception that parasites can't possibly control humans pervades, and those ignorant people laughed at Grandfather and slept all over his article. There are still many unsolved mysteries in the world of parasites. I'm here to solve them. I came here to help the people who want to solve them. A wish that's guaranteed to come true is not called a wish. That is fate, not a wish. I wield fate. Fate is an absolute power to control people and world, not just an individual. Learning isn't enough for me. I have to be able to research with my grandfather, and so I don't ignore the means to gain the help my grandfather couldn't get. Grandfather's research isn't complete just when it's finished being written on a desk. I need the help of plenty of people to present it to the world, so his great work will be known by many. Yes, that's correct. This is an association only the top graduates of the Imperial University are allowed to join. Therefore, as only 7 people per year are allowed to join, it's a small group compared to a normal organisation of alumni. However, its solidarity is unrivaled. Thank you for inviting me to such a gathering. I'm honoured. I'd like to take the lowest seat. Oh no, we can't let someone with such accomplishments and experience sit in the lowest seat. I'm sure everyone will welcome you. Cabinet Minister and several important government officials, company presidents and company advisors will be there. They'll all need you, and they'll provide the help you need. Dr. Koizumi belongs to this association, right? He was my grandfather's best friend. What a coincidence. I see. I'm sure Dr. Koizumi will be glad to find out that you will be joining. An isolated genius is a useless one. People live in a society, we live in a society, etc. Society is made up of connections between people. Nobody can ignore that. I do my best as an individual, but to gain the power that can't be achieved as a mere individual, I have to rely on my connections in society. It's all for one purpose. My only wish is Mia Takano. Yes, I can't spare any effort. My certain conviction will forge a certain future. Nobody can interfere. Nobody can stop me. I won't allow the die to roll a 1. I won't admit that diligent efforts can be erased by a mere train accident. I'm going to make all the dice roll 6s. I won't entrust the die to God. I won't give in to luck. The only people who pray to God are people who don't want to work hard. I don't trust God. I'm going to create results myself. My strong will is going to create a certain future that God can't possibly prevent. This is a different way to become a god than the one my grandfather taught me. This is a way to become a god while still alive. When I realised it, I became truly free. Free from the sadness of losing my parents and my miserable life after that. Free from my grandfather's tears when his article was stepped on. That's right. I'll be above gods. I'll be an existence that God's caprices can't even touch. I'll make people recognise grandfather's research. That's the future I wish for. The future I promise will come to pass. People will fight over grandfather's article. People will respectfully read the same article that was once ridiculed and stepped on. Even if grandfather dies before that day comes, I won't cry over something like that, because he already taught me. Even after being buried, one can be resurrected. I'm going to complete his great work and the whole world will praise him. Grandfather will resurrect and become a god. He'll be eternal. That's an everlasting bond. A bond not even a train accident can break. A bond not even a die that rolls on 1 can disturb. Since the day of the train accident, my die has kept rolling 1s over and over. But I didn't give up. I kept working hard until today. I'll rise above the die. I'll decide what to roll on it. I'll decide my own fate. I'll do that with my unshakable willpower. And here we are. So, when does the clinic open? Is there going to be air conditioning? I heard it'll open next month. I hope there'll be a young doctor there. I heard some old ladies talking amongst themselves when I was going up the stairs to the shrine. The Irie clinic is already completed, and it's waiting and ready for opening day. The state-of-the-art equipment has been delivered, and the research is waiting to begin as well. Irie too is standing by in top form, and he's almost as passionate as I am about Hinamizawa syndrome. The mountain dogs, the co-intel unit to support and protect our research, are already stationed at a dummy company somewhere near Oknomiya. They're getting in touch with various public institutions. Everything is going well. The only thing to worry about would be the rumours about the Hinamizawa dam construction plans. There's a rumour that the Ministry of Construction is pushing through a dam project that will submerge all of Hinamizawa, but they're under pressure from several groups. None of my contacts have much influence in the Ministry of Construction, so things aren't going well. Even if applying pressure doesn't work, there are other measures, so either way it will come to a deadlock. I'm not being optimistic. I just know that's how it will end. I will conduct research here in Hinamizawa. I'm going to accomplish that with my absolute will. That's why, even if God rolls a 1 on the die and says he's going to submerge Hinamizawa, I will not be afraid. I won't entrust my die to God. I'm the one who's going to pick up the die, and I'm going to roll a 6. I didn't come to the shrine to declare war on the god of this place. I came because I know that you can get a great view from up here. I walked by the shrine and headed to the spot I found last time I visited. It is a really nice view, to be honest. It's a perfect spot for overlooking the entire village. The strong wind reminds me that I'm only at the starting line, and that there will be headwind before I reach my goal. I looked over the village without faltering in the wind. Grandfather approached the syndrome from a medical point of view, but he also approached it from a folklore one as well. The strange belief system in this village is proof that the existence of Hinamizawa syndrome was known of even in ancient times, so it will be extremely useful to research the history too. My grandfather, however, hadn't been doing research for hundreds of years, of course. But this place has been here for hundreds of years, and they've been living with Hinamizawa syndrome for that long. Therefore, the beliefs created in this place and the legend itself can be considered the foremost researchers. Simply stupid to call them old folktales and nonsense. I've been researching them slowly, but they are indeed very interesting. No wonder grandfather was intrigued by them. Hinamizawa syndrome has many fascinating sides to it. It's just like a kaleidoscope, showing infinite light with a slight change in the angle. So much fun to trace grandfather's research. Finding the same results as my grandfather reminds me that I am indeed following in his footsteps, which makes me very happy. The shrine is dedicated to Oyashiro-sama, the guardian deity of this village. Takes a big slurp of a drink because my throat hurts. But the god the villagers worship is simply a delusion that was created by the parasites. When I solve their secret and announce it to the world, the god of this place will be no more. That's the moment I'll take revenge on the one who put me through mystery and tested my fate. That's it, isn't it? This isn't just about making my grandfather's dream come true. It's also about getting revenge for my miserable life. I went back to the front of the shrine. There's an offertory box there, and I'm tempted to throw in some coins. But you normally offer coins to ask for mercy. I don't trust my fate to God, so I don't need to give an offering. I'm going to unmask him. But until then, Oyashiro-sama is a god. In that case, I'll show respect for now. As a declaration of war, I pulled out a 10 yen coin from my wallet. The 10 yen coin I found in the telephone booth changed my life. If it hadn't been there, my life would have ended then. I'm grateful at least for that 10 yen coin. I'm not grateful to the god of this shrine though, but I haven't forgiven you yet. I never expected anything from you, and I'm here because of my own hard work. Even if you keep playing tricks of fate, or keep rolling one on the die, that won't bother me. With my certain will, I'm going to get what I want. My grandfather will be praised, and become a god because of the research I'll do in this place. I will defeat the gods of this village and become an existence above even gods. Since when did I care about God, huh? Maybe because my grandfather often talked about him? Here, this 10 yen coin you gave me before. My debt's paid off now. You just keep clinging to your throne and tormenting people with your trials, while I fight my battles to knock you down from there. And so I chucked the 10 yen coin I once borrowed from God in the offertory box. Eh? For a moment I couldn't understand what happened. The 10 yen coin was supposed to fall into the offertory box. But how can I explain this? That's not what happened. I am correctly for certain. Who could miss an offertory box anyway? That's not it. Because the 10 yen coin stopped in mid-air, as if it got stuck in a spiderweb. Then it bounced back to me and fell by my feet. It was as though the offertory box refused the coin. Of course, an offertory box is to respect God, but what I did was challenge him. That means this is... I jumped, because I thought I was the only one here. Anyone would jump on finding there's someone else standing there unexpectedly. How long has she been there? It's like she came out from the shrine. A mysterious girl is standing on the other side of the offering box. She's wearing a shrine maiden uniform, so she must be one of the caretakers here. That's what I thought too, but there's something else about her. She's not just one of the shrine caretakers, she's the shrine itself. Because the girl is staring into my eyes. No, she's glaring. I smiled back fearlessly. I think she heard my words of challenge to God. She's wearing that expression on her face because of that. The words came out naturally. You are the god of this place, aren't you? The girl didn't nod, but I took that as a yes. What a contradictory feeling. I'm rejecting the god of this land, denying its very existence. Yet I don't doubt that this girl is that god. But again, the question is, does she have the syndrome and is she hallucinating? Or is the supernatural real? I wonder this very often. The girl opened her mouth to speak. Strong will reinforces fate. That's right. That's what I say to myself often. I've never said that to anyone who quoted it from anything. So under normal circumstances, I should be surprised to hear this girl say that. But this girl isn't human, so I'm not surprised. I replied to her. God throws the die of fate and has fun with people, depending on what he gets. People have willpower. The stronger the willpower, the less chance of being bound by the result of the die. You see? People can gain the power that's strong enough to fight fate by working to their limits. Yes, I understand that very well. An unshakable conviction defeats the die of fate. That's right. That's mankind's revenge against the gods who toy with them by the dice roll. The hymn of those who would slough the gods' interference and forge their own destiny. Know my divinity, and that I earn this state through effort after enduring all misfortune. Spiteful laughter flowed out of my mouth, but the girl's face displayed a strong will of her own. Her expression didn't even change a bit. I understand very well. No matter how many times you repeat, fate doesn't change. That was all because of your strong willpower. That's right. A strong will reinforces fate. That fate, so empowered, isn't bothered by the result of the die. That means it's a certain future. You, a human, found out that truth before us gods. Been living for hundreds of years. So, I guess it's a showdown of Rika versus Takano. I admit it, your existence is close to that of a god. I'm honoured. The girl glared at me with her eyes half shut. No, it was more like she was proclaiming something to me while displaying her own strong willpower. I won't be defeated this time. We always thought we couldn't win against you. That was why I surrendered. I abandoned hope and crawled around in the wheel of life. But then I learned. The power of belief can cause a miracle that forges your destiny. You saying you'll cause a miracle, using your strong will that will defeat the destiny woven by mine? That's logical enough. Because that's the law of this world. A strong will can make a desired future possible. We won't be defeated by your will. That's fine. So you insist on being an old god. Try it and see if your willpower can defeat mine. God tests people, yet people aren't allowed to test God. So I'm going to test you here. See if your willpower can defeat mine. Come on, go ahead and try it. That's clearly a declaration of war from me to a god. This is the beginning of my revenge towards God, who put me through so much misery. And this god, is accepting my challenge directly. I'm not as powerful as you are. I can't do as many things as you can. Even if my willpower is as strong as yours, you're still more powerful than I am. That's right, I've gained an overwhelming power. You have absolutely no idea what I had to go through to gain it. You can't even touch me. I know how powerful you are. Compared to yours, the power my friends and I command is insignificant. But I can choose not to give up. I won't admit my loss. I won't give up until the day when your die rolls 1 and my die rolls 6. I'll prove the strength of my willpower by not surrendering to you for eternity. Stacking up stones on the riverbed will allow us to cross the river and appear before you as equal, and that's when this long battle of fate will come to an end. Fine, come on then. We'll see who has the stronger will. Whoever has the stronger conviction will create the future. The future desired by the stronger conviction will come to pass. I will hold my ground. In my future, my grandfather's great work is praised and he becomes a god, and I take revenge on God for testing me by making me go through such misery. Stupid little god, I'll show you. Drag you down from your pedestal. Bring it on. Spooky Takano. Spooky Takano. Chapter 8. Matsuribayashi. Any new tips? Nothing. The icon for that is a 10 yen piece. Well, folks, I am going to end here because my throat hurts and also we've got a perfect good the end point. I'm going to say thank you so much for watching. It is very much appreciated and I do hope that you enjoyed. I will be streaming Nier Automata on Saturday. We are going to be finishing off Route B, seeing what the emergency situation is back down on Earth. Then on then on Sunday, Jesus, I've forgotten how words work, it'll be Destiny 2, where we will be doing stuff. I don't know what we'll be doing, but we'll certainly be doing it. Then on, God, words are so hard. Tuesday, it'll be Final Fantasy XIV, where we will be doing the Starlight event, and then doing our raids and roulettes and other stuff on May. I'm going to be catching our shard up on 5.4 in the new year, so I'm just going to do stuff on May for now. And then next Thursday, we will be continuing Higurashi When They Cry, Matsuribayashi, and seeing what happens next, how strong our will can be. Just a quick note, I am actually going to be on holiday from the 21st through to the 28th. I am going to be not at my computer, I will be away. So I will not be streaming for a week. I'm going to update the website and I'll update like my calendars and stuff like that. But just so you know, we're winding up to the close of our streams. Destiny the Sunday after next will be my last stream before I go on holiday, so time for me to take a break while Christmas is a thing. So thank you very much everyone for watching. Have a wonderful evening. Do look after yourselves and be excellent to each other, and I shall see you guys on Saturday.